All right, let's get it drive time Thursday afternoon style, about 14 minutes past the hour of 2 o'clock. It's an April day that feels like April. At least it doesn't feel like February. We're approaching 50 degrees. It is cloudy here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. High speed ahead to a little bit of a warmer weekend and then a nice springtime week next week. So you're almost there if you're waiting for the sunshine like I am. And as it is every single day, it's good to have you along for the ride. Spence Checketts behind the mic. That is Porter Larson behind the glass today, producing the program. A lot to get to. Big night in pro basketball. Big night in the NBA. Big night in Los Angeles as the Warriors and the Lakers are going to play a basketball game, and it looks like all of the players that are employed to play basketball for both organizations are going to play basketball and try to win, because this is like a sneaky big game. Seeding on the line as we are high speed ahead to playoff basketball in the world of the NBA. The Utah Jazz, they showed up last night. Technically, they were present. They played the Houston Rockets. They lost by 38, and it really wasn't even that close. So 5 games left for the Jazz as the race to the bottom continues. The worst basketball team in pro basketball plays its basketball here in Salt Lake. The Jazz are the worst team in the NBA. So we'll talk a little Jazz basketball, talk a little NBA. The Cavs beat the Knicks last night. We talked about this prior to the end of the show. The Knicks are now 0-8 against Cleveland and Boston. So the Eastern Conference feels like it is a 2-team race. Dallas Mavericks won again last night. So, of course, that prolongs the full-time obligation of Alex Jensen, landing here in Salt Lake to become the 17th head coach of the Utah men's basketball program. Alex will finish off the season with Dallas before he really turns his full-time attention. Of course, Alex has been on the job, and he's made a couple of hires, and of course, the news broke yesterday that Keanu Dawes has withdrawn his name from the transfer portal and will play for Utah next year. Now, today, in case you didn't know, and you probably don't, because why would you? Today marks the first day of a week-long dead period in college basketball recruiting. Essentially, that means you can't have any in-person visits. You can't have players visit on campus. But you can visit with players via Zoom. And a report that a young man named Terrence Brown, who's a Fairleigh Dickinson transfer, was on a Zoom call with the Utah coaching staff today. So got to hit the ground running as the transfer portal opened a number of weeks ago. And we already have heard decisions made by a lot of different basketball players about where they're going to play. And, of course, if you're Alex Jensen, if you're the University of Utah, got to try to get talent as soon as you possibly can. Latest on the transfer portal for Brigham Young, it was announced yesterday that Dallin Hall is getting gone. Dallin Hall in the transfer portal, Cannon Catchings in the transfer portal. So a lot of rumors about who could be joining Kevin Young and BYU basketball to replace some of the transfers. BYU, according to most people that report on such things, has one of the top 3 NIL payrolls in all of college basketball, so I do not imagine attracting talent will be problematic for the near future down at BYU. Well, so the latest on the college basketball side of things as we're high speed ahead to the Final Four coming up on Saturday. All 4 number 1 seeds in the Final Four for the second time in tournament history and for the first time since 2008. Shout out to our guy Ken Pom. I didn't realize this until I was looking at his metrics. Ken Pom called the Final Four and the Elite 8. The top 8 teams in Ken Pom ratings made the Elite 8, and the top 4 teams in Ken Pom ratings are now in the Final Four. So college basketball, high speed ahead to the Final Four. Real Salt Lake welcomes in the LA Galaxy on Saturday at 2:30, America First Field in Sandy. Apple TV will have that covered. Go to rsl.com for single game tickets. The Utah Hockey Club welcomes in the LA Kings tonight at the Delta Center for a 7 o'clock drop of the puck. Wild card race is over. It was fun while it lasted, but it's not going to be a reality this year. And now the Utah Hockey Club finishes off the season and looks ahead to a very important offseason for Bill Armstrong and his staff. Geno Smith got paid today, a couple-of-year extension with the Vegas Raiders. So a little NFL offseason stuff. We're only 3 weeks away from the NFL draft. So we'll do some draft stuff on the show. Caleb Lohner is in Dallas for the Dallas Cowboys Pro Day. So the Cowboys looking at former Ute Caleb Lohner. So a lot to get to on the program today. Alex Ovechkin scored again, and he's getting closer to a record that once upon a time felt unbreakable, the all-time goal-scoring record by one Wayne Gretzky in the world of the NHL. Speaking of the NHL, our first guest right out of the gates today is Neil Smith for our weekly conversation to talk puck, talk hockey, talk Utah Hockey Club. Howard Beck rolls by for some NBA from the Ringer. The TV voice of the Utah Jazz, Craig Bolerjack, is our guest later on. Then RSL Club legend, key member of the front office, my buddy Jason Kreis, in the 4 o'clock hour. We're going to have an honest conversation with Jay today about whether or not these players are going to be signed prior to the primary transfer window closing, which is 3 weeks from today. So Neil Smith, Howard Beck, Craig Bolerjack, Jason Kreis. We'll do a little sports core with our friends from Handy and Handy coming up. Me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners. I do want to give a shout-out for all the simps that filled out brackets and picked all the number one seeds to make the Final Four, because you're probably winning your bracket if you don't really think very deeply. And let's welcome in Porter Larson. Happy Thursday, pal. How are we doing?
I'm doing well. How are you, Spencer?
Are you winning our bracket challenge?
Comfortably.
Yeah.
At the moment.
And why is that? Who's your Final Four?
The teams that are in it.
Oh, all the number ones.
Yeah,
all the number one seeds.
Yeah, the teams that made the Final Four are the teams that I picked to make the Final Four.
All the number one seeds.
Also, hey, just to be clear, I'm not only up by a few points, but I'll leave that there.
So wait a second. Is there any way anybody can catch you? Who do you have winning these games?
I have Auburn winning the title. Auburn-Houston is my matchup.
Auburn-Houston.
If that is the title and that is the matchup and Auburn wins, not only will I win the employee bracket, I believe I win the whole thing.
So what is it? Are you eligible for the prize?
I don't think so.
Oh, that's too bad.
But yeah, if it goes Houston-Auburn with Auburn winning, I think I pass up everyone involved. But hey, like you said, Ken Palm ratings. If you want a good bracketology, that's a decent place to look.
Did you enter a bracket anywhere else outside of work?
I do have a ESPN bracket. It's the same. I just did one bracket everywhere. So in good shape, though, in all of them.
All right, Final Four coming up on Saturday. And as I said yesterday, if it's not going to be me, it needed to be somebody from the show. So good job keeping our streak alive. I think that's 6 straight years somebody from the show has won. So good job.
And I was going to say, one of those years, if maybe it was the year before or maybe your first year, I won it there. So I think you and I, we got the bragging rights in the afternoon.
All right, we'll take it. So some college basketball, of course, Final Four, both on the men's and the women's side. All right, Neil Smith will be our first guest right out of the gates today. We'll do a little Utah Hockey Club. But before we get to Neil, courtesy of our good friends at Prize Picks, it is time now for your opening tip.
Welcome to The Drive with Spence Checketts on Utah's #1 sports talk. Now into the studios of ESPN 700 to set the scene for the show. The opening tip of The Drive is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code ESPN 700 and run your game with Prize Picks.
Download that Prize Picks app today, and you get $50 on the house. All you have to do is use the promo code ESPN700 when you place that first $5 bet. Do not even have to win that bet. They're just going to give you $50 if you download the app, sign up, use the promo code ESPN700 at checkout. Springtime is here. Baseball season is underway. Don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the diamond to your Prize Picks lineup. On Prize Picks, you can mix and match player projections from different sports, combine your favorite baseball players with players from basketball, hockey, esports, and much, much more, courtesy of our good friends at Prize Picks. All right, so as I referenced earlier, there's no reason that you would know this, but today is the first day of a 7-day dead period in college basketball recruiting. And essentially all that means is you cannot have players on campus. There's no in-person visits for the next week as the college basketball season wraps up coming up this weekend with a Final Four. And then on April the 11th, it will open up once again. So as we sit here awaiting word on who else could potentially play for Utah basketball, BYU basketball next year, we're probably not going to get a lot of news over the next week. We still could potentially get some news on the assistant coaches and as Alex goes about his business, filling his staff. I was told by somebody yesterday that the Andre stuff continues to simply be talked about. I don't think it's as much of a slam dunk, surefire hire that we thought it was, maybe right out of the gates. No information that is tangible and real on that just yet. So I think they're still talking. And I think it just comes down to Andre's desire to come back to this market and live here and coach for his alma mater as opposed to kind of continuing his own journey. Because when you're a head coach in the G League, you probably feel like you're 1 or 2 breaks away from maybe being in the big show. And I don't know where Andre's head is at just yet. But the one piece of news that did come down yesterday is that Keanu Dawes has withdrawn his name from the transfer portal, and he will play for Utah basketball next year. Hunter Erickson, high-speed head to Hawaii. Shout out to Hunter. He's going to spend his grad year on the Rock. Good for him. And we await word on players like Ezra Asar or Mike Shrabjamps or Jake Wallin, Miro Little, players like that. How many of those players Alex wants back is unclear, and how many of the players actually want to be here also unclear. Ezra Asar has children, I believe, in the Midwest. I think he has a couple of kids. He might want to get back home there. So that's the latest on the college basketball recruiting side of things for Utah. On the other side, for BYU, reports are floating out there that Richie Saunders is seriously considering coming back to play for Kevin Young and Provo next year with an NIL offer that is 7 figures. So it's interesting to consider this if you're Richie, if you're part of his support group. I'm sure he's got representation. All these young men do at this point, and family around him. At the age of 23, I think if you go through the pre-draft process, and anybody that is even kind of a fringe pro prospect should always go through the process. Because at the very least, Brandon Carlson did this 2 years ago. And I can remember when Brandon declared for the draft, I talked about on air. I'm like, I'm not sure if he's an NBA guy, but Brandon might as well go talk to as many NBA teams as he possibly can. Because what you do is you go to all these pro days, you go to the combine, and you have an opportunity to play in front of coaches and in front of scouts, and then they all give you feedback. So they'll say to Richie, okay, at the age of 23, the clock is ticking to get to the second contract, which is always the goal if you're a pro basketball player. I mean, rookie money is good money for normal people, but for pro basketball players, it is the second, third, and then eventually fourth, fifth contracts, depending on how long you can stick around and your health cooperating. That's when the generational wealth kicks in. But Richie will get real accurate feedback, Yegor Demon accurate feedback, these BYU players that are going to kick the tires on playing in the pros. If we hear that Yegor Demon and Richie Saunders are coming back to play for BYU, simply means they went through the draft process, didn't like what they saw and heard. And if you're Richie Saunders and the feedback is late second rounder undrafted, and BYU says come back for $1.7 million or whatever it is, maybe you take the 7 figures, you play one more year of college basketball, then you enter the draft next year. Okay, so it is kind of an interesting spot Kevin Young finds himself in a way that Alex Jensen up here just doesn't, where he probably has to wait to receive word from Yegor and Richie specifically, because Fus Traore's graduating. Trevenel, of course, is graduating. Dallin Hall in the transfer portal. They're losing a couple, like I think the Isaiah Stewart kid's a senior. So they know some of the players that are leaving, but I'm sure as Kevin Young goes about his business of trying to fill out his staff, he's still waiting to hear from Richie Saunders and Yegor Demon about what they're going to do. And as we talked about yesterday, I have to wonder if the Dallin Hall decision is kind of draped in information that maybe Yegor Demon is coming back, and of course he'll be the starting point guard again next year, and Dallin coming off the bench. Not sure how much Dallin made to stay at BYU. He entered the transfer portal a year ago. A lot of people thought he was just going to go to Lexington and follow Mark Pope. But Dallin Hall probably for another couple of years of eligibility can receive $500,000, $600,000 to play college basketball. So we'll see where he lands. But again, if you're hoping for Utah basketball recruiting news, BYU basketball recruiting news, we have entered, as of today, the dead period in college basketball recruiting where no in-person visits are allowed. This is all virtual. It's all Zoom. And so we kind of await word on Alex's staff and maybe some other pieces of the puzzle that will come together. The Jazz were in Houston last night. They got absolutely stomped. They lost by 38, and it wasn't that close. The Jazz have 5 games left. They'll be at Indiana coming up tomorrow. We'll do some Jazz basketball later on. But the Utah Hockey Club is in action tonight. They welcome in the LA Kings. The race for the wild card is all but done. So we won't have playoff hockey here in the market, but we do have some interesting hockey storylines to talk about. Alex Ovechkin is on the precipice of breaking Wayne Gretzky's scoring record. So we'll do some Utah Hockey Club. We'll do some Ovechkin and some NHL with Neil Smith coming up on the other side of a Thursday drive. So keep it right here on ESPN 700. Utah Hockey Club welcomes in the LA Kings tonight. 7 o'clock drop of the puck down at the Delta Center here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. Our next guest joins us on a weekly basis to talk about the world of pro hockey, little Utah Hockey Club. Neil Smith, good enough to give us some time on this Thursday afternoon. Neil, happy Thursday, sir. How are you?
I'm good. I'm very good, thanks. Coming down the stretch here of the NHL season and looking forward to seeing who matches up in the playoffs.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll get to some big picture NHL stuff in a moment. And I don't know if it's the pressure of the wild card race essentially being over, but ever since they're not officially eliminated, but if we're honest, it's not happening. But they've won their last two games by a combined score of 8-3 at Chicago and then Calgary here. And of course, Calgary is one of the teams they were trying to chase in the standings. And we'll see if Calgary can catch St. Louis, who just doesn't lose all of a sudden. But do you think it's kind of just the pressure off this young team that's allowed them to win a couple of games in a pretty impressive fashion ever since it became pretty apparent that they weren't going to make the playoffs?
You know, there is a lot of pressure that comes off of the players when they know one way or the other what's going to happen. And I've seen often teams that are eliminated or know they're going to be eliminated to play with a lot more ease and play a lot more relaxed. So that definitely can happen. But I just want to remind you of one thing for you and your listeners about the season, because I had said at the beginning what I thought would happen. And you have to remember that last year, the Arizona Coyotes, which is this year's Utah Hockey Club, 7 points at the end of the season. And Utah currently has 80 with 7 games to go. So if they get 500 in those 7 games, just to throw out a number, if they can go 500, they'll end the season with 87 points. That's a 10-point jump from what they did last year. And I think a pretty darn good improvement of the club from a year ago. So if there's light at the end of the tunnel for this hockey team, I think that's it, that they've made improvements and they're continually improving.
Really good point. And also, if we include in the dynamic the fact that all of these people got a phone call that said, you live in Salt Lake now, and they were able to make the move and not allow that to, move the program in the wrong direction. And you've been good enough to outline how the ownership complications in Arizona led to Ryan Smith being able to make this happen with the cooperation, of course, with Gary Bettman and the NHL. And Commissioner Bettman joined our show and said the first conversation he had with Ryan about this was in March, and suddenly it was the first week of May, and they're here. So what does that say about the character of the organization that they didn't and I know that there were so many positives about the move, but, whenever we talk about this, and of course this is based off my background, I talk a lot about the personal angle here where you're moving families and you're moving children and you're relocating and you're selling a home and you're buying a new home. I know a lot of these people make a lot of money, and so the complications might fall on deaf ears for normal folk, but it doesn't matter how much money you have when you're moving around and you're kind of upsetting the apple cart with your family and you're asking people to settle into a new community. It can provide complications. So what does it say to you that even moving into a new community, the hockey club was able to continue this incremental growth that Bill Armstrong talks about all the time?
No, I think it's great. I think it says a lot of things about the ownership of the club, down to the management of the club, down to the character of the players of the club, and of course the coaches. But that's a big adjustment, and you think people don't often think about it. You and I do because we've been through it together. But a guy has to move. If he's got kids, they got to change schools. They got to go and make all new friends. And you know how tough that is on kids. That they got their friends at school. It's a lot of people. Their wife is from the city that they were in. They met them earlier in their career, perhaps in Phoenix or wherever, and now they've got to ask them to leave there where they've lived their whole life and go to a new place. So it's not just the hockey player that gets has to make a big adjustments, but it's the family of the hockey players that have to make the bigger adjustment because everybody's doing what they can do to support Dad in his hockey career, and it is truly a big adjustment and one that goes unnoticed by the normal fan. All they know is that, well, he used to be wearing a coyote on the front of his jersey, and now he's got Utah written down his jersey, and that kind of thing. But it can be traumatic.
So I want to put you in Bill Armstrong's seat as the roster constructor and the main decision maker. You're viewing this, I would imagine, as a successful season, and yet just another step in the right direction. And at what point do you kind of start looking ahead to start considering what decisions you need to make sure the progress continues the way you want it to go?
I think he's doing it continuously. I'm sure he's doing it continuously. So he's evaluating every day and every player and who's out there, and he's meeting with pro scouts and finding out what their thoughts are about the guys that could potentially be free agents or be gotten in a deal. That exercise never stops for the GM. They're doing that all the time. Now, obviously, Bill is going to focus more in on the future now than the present because of the fact that the present is sort of decided. And I want to say one other thing about the present being decided. The only reason it's been this clearly decided is because you had a team win 10 straight games, and that's the St. Louis Blues. They play Pittsburgh tonight looking for their 11th straight. They separated themselves from the pack by doing that. And if you remember when we spoke 2, 3, 4 weeks ago about Utah and their chances to get in, I said if they could get on a run, they could do it. And that's what St. Louis did. And so, and that's what separated them from the pack. Minnesota's been pretty good all year long. Now they've had a lot of injuries, so they've slipped back a bit, and they're in the wild card. But it's not just Utah that couldn't keep up with St. Louis. The Vancouver Canucks won the Pacific Division last year and just lost out in Game 7 in the first round to Edmonton, and they're going to miss the playoffs. And Calgary, who's had a remarkable season for what we expected, it looks like they're going to miss the playoffs. So it's really hard, and it would be very unfair to think that Utah Hockey Club could keep up with a 10-0 record that St. Louis went on at this critical time in the season.
Let me ask you about how St. Louis did this because, as a result of my background, they're one of the teams I kind of loosely follow. And for the majority of the season, they were looking up at not just the Utah Hockey Club, but a lot of the other teams. What clicked there? Because as you referenced, 10 straight wins. It is the longest winning streak in the NHL by kind of a long shot. Dallas has won 6 straight, but St. Louis with 10 straight. What clicked for them?
Well, I think there's a number of things, but the most visible thing is Jordan Binnington, their starting goaltender, who played in the Four Nations for Canada. He was a starting goaltender for Canada in the Four Nations tournament. Canada won the tournament. Jordan Binnington was the winning goaltender of the Four Nations tournament. And since then, he's been 11-1. He's won 11 and only lost 1 since the Four Nations. So when you've got a goaltender standing on his head like that, that's a huge part of it. Now, you got to give credit to Jordan Kyrou and to Jim Montgomery, the head coach, and so on. And there's a lot of other pieces there. But the most visible piece to me is the outstanding play of their goaltender, Jordan Binnington. He's playing like he did when they won the Stanley Cup a number of years ago. So to answer your question, that's what I think it is.
Dallas, I referenced second in the Central, and Winnipeg is still the class of that division. Their differentials plus 80, but Dallas has turned it on too. You referenced them not too long ago as a team to watch out for. What's kind of clicked for them over the past couple of weeks, Neil?
Well, I think Ottinger, the goaltender, and of course, I'm always going to start with the goaltender because without goaltending, you're not going to win. So you sort of got to go there first. But I think Ottinger's been very good for them. They're doing this too without one of their very best players, Miro Heiskanen, the defenseman, who's a dynamic force for them. And if they get him back for the playoffs, they're going to be even better. But I think there's been a number of things. Jason Robertson is scoring goals. Wyatt Johnson has been quite well developed and now is putting pucks in all the time. They've got a good combination there that are all coming together at the same time. And, we've said all season that Dallas is a good team. They seem to be peaking at the right time. I like the moves that Jim Nill did before the deadline when he got Granlund and Ceci from San Jose. He moved early and got those guys. And, there's still a chance that they could catch Winnipeg. That's not out of the realm of possibility. That they're only 4 points behind them, and they have one more game than Winnipeg to play. So, it's not out of the realm of possibility that they could get there. It's going to be really tough for Colorado to catch Dallas now. They're 6 points back of them. So it looks at this point like it'll be Dallas and Colorado in the first round. And that's sort of sad, Spence, because they're both Stanley Cup contenders, and yet one of them is going to be gone in the first round.
Of course, a ton of attention on Ovechkin's chase to break Wayne Gretzky's record, and he's only 3 goals shy of doing that. And I think he's projected to do that April 12th or 13th, according to what I was reading earlier on the ESPN coverage. But kind of lost in Ovechkin's chase is that he's doing it during a good run for a team that has a chance to make some noise in the East. I mean, oftentimes when a player is aging and he's chasing stats, and I'm thinking pro basketball when Kareem broke his record and LeBron broke the scoring record during a pretty, a mediocre year for the Lakers. Oftentimes when a player is aging, chasing a record like this, he's not playing for a team that's contending. And I just kind of wonder what your thoughts are on just the fact that Ovechkin is close to breaking that record, but he's also doing it for a team that's in the midst of a run that could put them in contention to hoist the cup. What are your thoughts on that dynamic, Neil?
I think that's a really good point. I remember when Wayne was breaking a lot of records back in his day with the LA Kings is when he broke most of the records. That's when he broke the Gordie Howe goal scoring record. And the Kings, were not up and contending teams. So I think what you're saying, and I want to agree with wholeheartedly, is Ovechkin's doing this, and they haven't taken their eye off the ball, the Capitals. They haven't said, well, let's do all this for OV and back off on our defensive responsibilities. Let's take every chance we have to get OV the record. They're still playing great hockey. Now, last night they got creamed by Carolina because they played the night before, and Carolina was right on their game. They lost 5-1, and guess who got the one goal? Ovechkin, of course. So it is remarkable what he's doing at his age and how that is helping his team perhaps win the President's Trophy, but certainly be a dominant force in the East. And I think that they really want to have this record broken at home. I think that you may see it work out that he scores that goal against Columbus on the 12th, or maybe against on the 13th against Columbus, or that may work out that way. Or if he can score against Chicago and then at the Islanders, he could do it at home against Carolina. But I think he's about 4 games away from doing it now. And if I'm right about that, that would put him right in line with doing it against Columbus, either there. They play back-to-back 12th and 13th. So it would either be in Columbus or in Washington against Columbus. So Merzlikins, who is the goaltender for Columbus, has that to look forward to. Like, I'm going to be the one that's probably going to get beat for the record-setting goal.
Well, we've been hyper-focused on the wild card race out this way in the Western Conference to see if the hockey club can get it done. There's straight chaos in the East, Neil, isn't there? It looks like Ottawa's going to pull away and grab one of the spots, but they've lost a couple in a row. Montreal's differential is minus 25, yet they're right there. But my guys, the Rangers, they've kind of resurrected their playoff chances, and they're tied with Montreal right now. Montreal does have a game in hand. Who do you think captures that second wild card? Looks like Ottawa's going to grab the first.
I think because on strength of schedule, you've got to go with Montreal, only because they only have 3 more games left against teams that are currently in the playoffs, and they have 5 games left against non-playoff teams. So, and if you look at the Rangers' schedule, they have 5 against playoff teams and only 2 against non-playoff teams, and those 2 come back to back. So, and I I don't like the way the Rangers are playing. When I look at them, I think with the talent that they've got on their team, they should be a lot better than they are. But their structure doesn't seem to be there, and every night something goes wrong for them. And even with Shesterkin in net, they squeak out wins like they did last night over Minnesota, but Minnesota got a point there. So I really do think that the Montreal Canadiens are on a mission to make it. I would have, if my heart dictated who would make it, Spence, I would have had Columbus Blue Jackets make it because of what they've been through preseason and during the season for that franchise, losing Johnny Gaudreau and his brother Matthew. But your heart doesn't set the standings, but I think it looks to me like the Habs, the Montreal Canadiens, are going to make that last spot.
We always talk about this time of year when the playoffs are right around the corner about teams that find their form at the right time. So I want to go back to the Western Conference. And, of course, Winnipeg has been the class all year. We talked Dallas and Colorado. There's Vegas. The Kings are in town tonight. But based off of what the Blues have done, do you change the way that you kind of look at them heading into the postseason since they have seemed to capture the right form at the right time of year?
They're a plus 18. They've really turned their season around. I mean, that 10-0 will end at some point because they always do, no matter who the team is. But yeah, could they be a team that goes into the playoffs now with nothing to lose because nobody expected them to make it? Could they do what they did back in 2019 and come in and start surprising people? Sure. I don't expect that, but I think they could do that. I still think that the heavyweights are Winnipeg, Dallas, Colorado, and Vegas. I think then after that, you've got Edmonton and LA, who look like they're ready to play a fifth straight first round against each other, if you can believe it. Oof. LA and Edmonton. But it'll all be interesting which way it goes. And again, out there you've got those five really dynamic teams that have all got a shot. In the East, you've got one division, the Atlantic Division, that's got three Stanley Cup contenders: Toronto, Tampa, Florida, and then you've got in the Metro, you've got Washington and Carolina. So you've got five in the East, five in the West. I can't say and be honest with you that it's anybody's game, like it's anybody's cup. I think there's still favorites out of those 10 teams I just mentioned, but it's going to be a hell of a series, a hell of a playoff.
And, that's one of the great things about this format, and I'm not sure why, and we'll wade into this area for a moment. I'm not sure what breeds upsets in the Stanley Cup playoffs in a way that the NBA doesn't see. But we do oftentimes see upsets, and oftentimes home ice advantage doesn't mean the same that home court advantage means. Any thoughts on that for, a new hockey market out here, why the Stanley Cup playoffs in professional hockey seem to breed upsets more often than pro basketball does? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, my thoughts are that there is a lot of pressure playing at home. And so it has turned from not being that much of an advantage anymore to play at home, I think, because of the pressure. When you're on the road, it's you against the world. There's a traveling party of 30 people, and it's 30 and 20,000 others cheering for the other side. I do think that there can be a lot of pressure when the expectations are high for your team. And certainly the teams that I just mentioned, they've all got very high expectations on them. If you take a look at Toronto, for example, in the East, and you know this, Spence, they haven't won the Stanley Cup since 1967. So the Leaf fans are just frothing at the mouth to get them to do well in the playoffs. And their whole season will be judged by the playoffs. And the Florida Panthers want to repeat. The Washington fans are going to think that they've got a Stanley Cup team because they're way up in the standings. And we've already talked about these teams in the West where, Edmonton Oilers fans think, well, why shouldn't we win with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl? But to get to your point about upsets, I think that it's a pressure thing. It's a sometimes when those expectations are that high, it can make you squeeze your stick a lot tighter and not play as loose as you should. So Winnipeg, for example, hasn't been successful in the playoffs. They've been successful in the regular season. And they're going to be judged by their fans based upon what happens in the playoffs. And if they lose in the first round, well, that 6 or 7 months of regular season hockey will be out the window.
So the Utah Hockey Club has announced that after their final regular season home game, which will be April 10th versus Nashville, they're going to hand out their postseason awards. Fans can vote on it right now, so check that out. If they asked you, Neil Smith, the MVP of the Utah Hockey Club this season, who would you go with? Clayton Keller is their leading. He leads them in points kind of by a long shot. I know a lot of people close to the club would tell you Sergachev should be an option. And when you look at the unsure nature of the goalie situation, because Connor Ingram has not had a great year, maybe Vejmelka's in the mix as well. Who do you think the Utah Hockey Club MVP is this year, Neil?
I'm going to go back where I was at the beginning of the year because I like this kid, Clayton Keller, the St. Louis native. I mean, he's been the captain. He's had a fantastic year. But you've got so much growth going on there. I mean, you've mentioned it. You've got Vejmelka, who was on a contract that was going to expire, gets a new contract and has played really well for them and has proven that he can handle the reins. This kid, Dylan Gunther, what a player he is and what a shot he's got and able to score goals. He's got a fantastic future in front of him. So I guess I would go with the captain and say that if I had to vote or had to say somebody who was their MVP, it would be Clayton Keller because he's done a good job in both his roles there. But and you mentioned Sergachev, and Sergachev has been really a great acquisition by Bill Armstrong. And when I got to be honest with you, when they acquired him, I thought, I wonder if they're getting damaged goods because he'd had those injuries in Tampa, and boy, he has played great for them for Utah and has, I think, set given them an element that they didn't have in playing tough and playing also good offensively. So, I think any one of those guys would be deserving.
Before I set you loose, Neil, genuinely curious, there's a debate around the NBA right now, and it's prevalent here in Salt Lake because the worst team in the NBA is the Utah Jazz, and they're not alone in their approach. There's about 10 teams. If I'm being generous, I would say 6 or 7 teams. But if I'm being honest, I would say about 10 teams in the NBA have stopped trying. Players have been shut down. They're not playing the rest of the year. And the Jazz were in Houston last night. They got smoked by nearly 40, and that's kind of status quo. How prevalent, if at all, is tanking in the world of pro hockey?
Well, we have the lottery, and so therefore, even if you do tank, it doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to end up with not only not the first pick, but not even be in the top 3. I don't think there's anybody in the league that tanks here because I think the rebuilders are obvious. I think that, for example, San Jose and Chicago are in the middle of a massive rebuild. I think that the Ducks are a little bit ahead of them in that. And, over in the East, you got the Philadelphia Flyers that are in a rebuilding stage that nobody's going to try to lose to get the first pick. It's not like when the old days when Mario Lemieux was going to become available and New Jersey and Pittsburgh were the 2 candidates to be last. And New Jersey tried to win their games, and Pittsburgh tried to lose theirs. And guess who Mario Lemieux became iconic with is the Pittsburgh Penguins. So It doesn't happen as much in the NHL. I don't think it would do them any good to do that because they wouldn't accomplish a lot. I think what you have in the league is you have teams that are rebuilding and know they're not going to win that season, so they're just trying to do whatever they can to build for the future.
All right, Neil, where can everybody go find the podcast?
It's on every podcast platform, and it's NHL Wraparound, and we've been having a lot of fun with it, and it's going to get even more fun in coming up in the future. So you can get it on Apple or Spotify or YouTube or anywhere where you get your podcasts called NHL Wraparound. Please subscribe. Please give us a hit. We need all the numbers we can get, and We need the word to get spread. But we do have listeners in Salt Lake City. I've been looking at that.
There we go.
So this show is helping us get listeners in Salt Lake City. So I must be saying something right.
Well, we appreciate your presence every week. You've been good enough to help us understand this sport we're all trying to get used to, Neil. So anything we can do for you, we're happy to do that because you do so much for us. So thank you for the time and have a great weekend, okay?
You too. Thanks for having me on.
All right, Neil Smith stops by today, courtesy of our friends at IFA Country Stores. At some point, the weather will get warm consistently, which means now is the time to start thinking about your lawn and care for your lawn. So any drive to the basket begins with the first step. On the court, that's the ultimate power move. IFA's Step 1 Crabgrass Preventer and Lawn Food is the first choice to give your yard the healthy, thick green look you desire. The neighbors will be green with envy. Shop IFA online at ifa.coop or stop by one of their 18 Utah locations today. All right, we got 1 hour down. We've got 3 hours to go. We'll switch gears. The 3 o'clock hour is all NBA. We're going to do NBA with Howard Beck coming up, then some jazz with Craig Bowlerjack. Jason Christ stops by in the 4 o'clock hour for some RSL. We'll get to some offseason NFL news and some Utah spring football coming up as we're just a couple of weeks away from the Forever 22 game. We got a little scrimmage on Saturday that's actually open to the media, so we'll be able to watch that. But we got a little Howard Beck coming up on the other side on a Thursday drive. So keep it right here on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. We are proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network. TV voice of the Utah Jazz, Craig Bolerjack, is our guest coming up in just a bit. The Jazz, well, they were in Houston last night. Technically, they were present. It didn't go well because, that's the deal. 5 games left for the Jazz. I would imagine broadcasters, just like players and coaches and front office staff and everybody involved, is kind of ready for this season to end. That's just my guess. Our next guest covers the NBA for The Ringer, one of my favorite NBA writers for a long, long time on a Thursday afternoon. It is Howard Beck. Howard, happy Thursday, sir. How are you?
Doing well, Spence. How are you?
Well, I wonder from your perspective and covering this league for so long, what it's like for an organization at the end of a season like the Jazz are going through. For the first time in the 50-plus years of the Jazz history, they've lost more than 60 games. They are, by record and by eye test and everything else, the worst team in the NBA. And look, losing takes a toll on coaches and players in a different way than it takes on probably everybody else involved because they're the main actors. They're involved, and these guys are competitors. But from just an organizational standpoint, what sort of toll do you think this takes? Because it just feels like everybody I talk to down there is kind of ready for this season to end.
It definitely takes a toll, and it's interesting because we can take the 30,000-foot view, and obviously it's much easier for me to do so from a distance as a national writer covering the league. It's different when you're there. If you're a Jazz fan, if you're working for the Jazz, if you're even a reporter covering the Jazz. I even know this just based on the really bad years I covered the Knicks, where I have no stake in the outcome. I have no emotional investment, but being around a team that is mired in that kind of losing for months on end, it just makes for a really depressing environment, right? So it's everybody, like the players you definitely feel it from, and the coaches you feel it from, but even support staff. It just there's this cloud that hangs over an entire organization, and it underscores why it's so tough to do and why it's so inadvisable perhaps to do what the Sixers did with the process 10 years ago, because you do that year after year and you know that there's no end in sight. This is sports. It's supposed to be about, there's highs and lows, but it's supposed to be about the joys of the game, and that's all just robbed from you when you have a season like this, or especially multiple seasons like this. So there's no question, without having talked to anybody there recently, that it's taking a toll on everyone involved. I'm just about to get out of my car here, so give me 2 seconds.
No, you're good. Howard Beck is our guest. The Utah Jazz were in Houston last night. They're going to be in Indiana coming up. That is tomorrow for a Friday tilt. Only 5 games left for the Jazz. No, you're good. Only 5 games left for the Jazz. Howard Beck is joining us. So since you brought up Philly, what do they do? What does this offseason look like for the Philadelphia 76ers? Because it's not just can Embiid ever stay healthy. It's a lot more than that, Howard.
I think it starts with that, though, because if you think about, just the whole inflection point of this season and of their trajectory for the next few years, everything is just going to be about whether or not this next surgery that he's having on his knee does what it needs to do, clears everything up. If Embiid is even 90% of himself next season, a lot of other things fall into place, right? Like, yes, there will still be Paul George concerns because of his age and injury history, but a healthy, thriving Embiid means that Paul George only has to be your second or third best player and not your best, which was the role he had to play for parts of this season, and not very well. Everybody's back in their proper place if Embiid is himself again. So there's the glass half full potential for the Sixers, not to be Pollyannish about it, but there is a glass half full possibility. So Embiid gets the surgery, Embiid returns to some semblance of his old dominance. Now you've got a player who's, one of the top 10 in the league. We know what Tyrese Maxey's capable of. We know what Paul George, even at the stage of his career, is capable of. You saw a really nice debut from Jared McCain, their rookie. Before he got hurt, he was in line for potentially Rookie of the Year, or certainly was going to be in the conversation until he went down. They picked up Quentin Grimes from the Mavericks in a trade midseason. Grimes has been fantastic for them. So they've got some good role players. They've got some good youth. And it looks like they're going to have. Now, the lottery balls could be cruel to them. If the lottery balls knock them out of the top 6, their pick goes to the Thunder. But if the Sixers just simply keep their pick after the lottery, now they also have a top 6 pick to play with. Like, maybe that's another really good young player, or maybe because they're kind of still in a win-now mode as long as you have Joel Embiid and Paul George, maybe they're flipping that pick for something else, for some immediate help. So there's a scenario here where the Sixers come out of this offseason in potentially good shape. But yes, everything still goes back to, but can Embiid hold up? Can he stay healthy? And can he reclaim his dominance for any length of time?
Do you think there's any thought, because it's kind of like the fool me once thing, like, and I know there were some conversations about Embiid maybe wanting out of Philly last off season, and to your point, I mean, look, when he is fully healthy, he's as close to as impossible to cover as anyone not named Nikola Jokic, and so he is that guy. Is there a possibility that Philly does their calculation? It's like he's not going to stay healthy. It's time for us to move on, because if they decided to do that, Howard, it just takes one, and I'm sure there would be a lot more than one lined up to try to grab Embiid if Philly decides to move on from him.
I've gotten no sense that he wants to leave, and I've gotten no sense that the Sixers would want to move on, other than the obvious of, feeling like maybe there's a ticking time bomb there, right? But the sense I've gotten from the Sixers, in recent months has been that there's no reason to actually believe that this is some sort of chronic, or even worse, a degrading injury. Like, I don't think it's the kind of thing where they're worried that he's never going to be Joel Embiid again. I think, whether it's wishful thinking or whether it's just based on what their doctors are telling them, I think the Sixers still expect that Joel Embiid's going to be pretty close to himself again. So I don't think there's any scenario where he's on the move or where they're even trying to move him. I also think that if you did decide to go that direction, it'd be really tough, because I think of it in the same way I think of Zion, who's obviously much younger, but there's certain guys who, like, the risk-reward potential makes it really hard to figure out what their value is. Like, if you're a team trying to acquire Joel Embiid, given the recent injury history, how much are you truly willing to give up on the risk that he's not going to be himself? And plus, if the Sixers are willing to move him, you have all that much more reason to think, well, they must want out of the Joel Embiid business for a reason. So now you're even more cautious. And if you don't want to give up that much, well, then the Sixers aren't going to want to move him, right? Like, you're not moving, a player of his caliber, even with the injury history, unless you're getting a boatload in return, or at least enough in return that makes you think you can, kickstart a new future. Now, all that said, what if the lottery balls really go their way and they end up with Cooper Flagg? Is that a reason to keep everybody else and say that Cooper Flagg's now the missing piece who's going to, help Joel Embiid, Paul George, and Tyrese Maxey make a deep run? Or is it now we've got our new guy to build around, and that makes it more palatable to start over and maybe try to move Embiid? But again, I don't. We're way ahead of ourselves. I don't think any of those things are particularly likely. And I also think that given the size of Joel Embiid's contract, I don't know that a lot of teams are going to be willing to give up a ton to get him, even if he were made available.
I think I may have asked you this about a month ago, and if I remember correctly, the answer was Shea. And it just, watching the other night, Jokic with a 60-point triple-double, and every time I hone in on him and he has one of those nights, I just am sitting there. I'm like, I don't know that I've ever seen this in my entire life around the NBA. I'm not sure I've ever seen a player quite like him. He is unique in every way. Where are you at today on the MVP debate between SGA and Jokic?
Yeah, I mean, everything you just said about Jokic is obviously true. Like, he's a truly unique figure in NBA history, incredibly dominant. And he's having another season that, by any number of different standards that you could apply, by any number of metrics you could apply, is historic and dominant and incredible. But Shea is also having a historic and dominant and an incredible season, and he's doing it for a team that is still on pace to potentially win 70. And if they don't win 70, it's going to be 68 or 69. Like, the Thunder are going to have one of the greatest seasons in NBA history. Obviously, only two teams have ever cleared 70. There aren't even that many that have won 67 or more. It's I don't know, a half dozen or so. That matters to me. That has always mattered to me as an MVP voter. And so, yeah, I don't think there's much doubt in my mind. I will always reassess everything before I actually fill out the ballot. But to me, it's been Shea for a bit here, and it's still Shea.
I've got to follow up, since you are a voter. Did you receive a sparkling package in the mail from our local basketball team encouraging you to vote for Isaiah Collier as first-team All-Rookie? It's all we got, Howard. That's all we got out here.
It was a lighter package than some years. Yeah, I did get that. I will say it's going to be hard for any team to top and I always think these campaigns are a little goofy and they have no bearing on how we actually vote. But it's going to be hard for anybody to top the Washington Wizards, who this year sent me 3 pints of various flavored ice cream, and it's really good ice cream.
Oh man,
I don't even remember what they were trying to get me to vote for with that ice cream. I just can tell you that the ice cream's really good.
we have the best ice cream in the world. We blew it. I mean, I guess by the time ice cream from Utah gets to Brooklyn, it probably would be melted. And look, I don't know if you
packed in dry ice.
Oh.
So there's a way to do it, apparently.
Okay, look, if the Washington freaking Wizards are doing things better than the Utah Jazz, we have an issue out here. But look, if you don't have anything here, we can punt and move on quickly. This rookie class, I mean, I love Stephon Castle. I was praying he would fall to the Jazz. I loved him in college. Richardson, but when you look at what Collier has done, he does have a case potentially for at least being second team all rookie. I don't know how much you've dug in here, and if you haven't, we can move on. But any thoughts on whether or not you think he has a shot to make these teams?
I have not dug in that far.
Fair enough.
And this is a tough rookie class in general, which probably makes his chances that much higher because in a year where there's not a lot of spectacular rookies, it means that people are going to go in 1,000 different directions, which means the votes will be spread so far that it might not, the bar to entry might be lower. So, but I will get to that hopefully by the time we talk again.
So as a guy did you cover the Melo Knicks?
Some of those years.
Okay.
Not all.
So I felt like, and I don't know if it was just me as a Knick fan, my childhood being intertwined to that organization, just appreciating that Melo took on the New York Challenge in a way that most stars seem to be either afraid of or they didn't want to work for that idiot owner, a different topic. But Melo at least embraced it, tried to do it, and did it at a very high level. Never made it out of the second round of the postseason. But for about, I don't know, Howard, 5 or 6 years, I felt like he was the best pure individual scorer in the game. And I don't know if it's because he came out when LeBron did and D. Wade did, but it seemed like whenever anybody talked about Carmelo Anthony and whether or not he was a Hall of Famer, it was intertwined in this whole he's never won it and he's not LeBron, who he was drafted with. I think it's a no-brainer that he's a Hall of Famer. Of course, it's not just the NBA. It's a national championship at Syracuse. It's 3 gold medals with the U.S. basketball team. But your thoughts now that it's official that Carmelo Anthony is a Hall of Famer?
Yeah. Also, by the way, really good dude, and he was always really good to the media too, which we all appreciated, and kept his sense of humor through good times and bad too. It was not all fun and games with the Knicks in particular. He's been a polarizing player and was in real time as well. The Hall of Fame thing is unquestionable. No one can even. I don't know how anybody can question that. And you just said it. People need to remember it's a basketball Hall of Fame and not an NBA Hall of Fame. And even by NBA Hall of Fame standards, if that were a thing, he'd be in. But especially with the basketball Hall of Fame, where your college resume matters, and he did win a national championship as a freshman, where your Olympics matter, and he's got multiple gold medals. All of that is baked in, which made him just automatic. As a player for the Knicks, he was certainly polarizing. They did not have a ton of success, and they certainly didn't have the success that they hoped to have when they got him and paired him with Amari Stoudemire. Amari couldn't stay healthy. They brought in Tyson Chandler, but they didn't have the means to really fill out that roster, in part because Carmelo forced a trade to the Knicks instead of waiting for free agency. And in doing so, it robbed them of a lot of, draft capital and trade chips. And so, he's even mentioned at one point himself, maybe that made it tough on them and it made it hard for them to build around me. So, they had more, I think, frustrating seasons than good ones with him here. They only made the second round once. There were a bunch of seasons without the playoffs. It felt, I think, overall, that era was a bit of a bust in some ways. And toward the end, Carmelo was getting booed at times because, of the obvious things, his shot selection at times was questionable. And, he liked to do a lot of one-on-one and a lot of dribbling, a lot of ISO. And that style of play was also starting to go out of fashion at that time. His style of play does not really sell well in today's NBA. As kind of a bruiser who's going to, post up and have the ball in his hands a lot in the post area. So still an incredible scorer, one of the best of all time, and the Hall of Fame nod is absolutely deserving.
The Knicks fall to, I think it's 0-7 against Cleveland and Boston. Is that an accurate representation on kind of where they exist in the ecosystem of the Eastern Conference this year?
I don't think the record lies. I just think it's not one where it's like, oh, they went 2-5 against these guys.
Right.
Like there's a mixed bag. And granted, the more recent losses are tough because they've been without Jalen Brunson, who might be coming back here soon. But yeah, the record is what it is, and like I think those teams are just demonstrably better than the Knicks and demonstrably better than Milwaukee and Detroit, Indiana, and everybody else in the East. So there's a gap. It doesn't mean that the Knicks at full strength might not be able to take 4 of 7 from one of those teams. I mean, I think they still got a better chance against Cleveland than Boston, and they did beat Cleveland. This version of Cleveland a couple of years ago, the Knicks smoked them in the first round of the playoffs, and I think that was partially an indication of where the Cavs were at that time. And their young guys hadn't been in the playoffs before. Mobley and Garland just were deer in headlights in that series. So they're a much different team now, obviously. The standings, are attest to that. The record attests to that. Their play attests to that. So, yeah, I think the Knicks are a distant third in the East, but with a puncher's chance. They've got just enough to make it interesting and to make a plausible case. But I don't think what we've seen this season indicates that they're ready to get through Cleveland and Boston.
As a man with impeccable musical taste and an incredible musical palette, I'm surprised I've never asked you for a complete, comprehensive breakdown of the musical chops of JD and the Straight Shot.
If you want a good laugh, I hope it's a good laugh. Go on the New York Times website or just use Google my name and Dolan and JD in the Straight Shot, and you'll find a absolutely preposterous piece I did at the Times way back when, in which I used lyrics from his songs on his then new album as a means for answering questions that he otherwise would not answer since he was not meeting with the media. It was kind of a Stephen Colbert ripoff where, Colbert would pretend to have interviewed somebody by using other clips. That's what I did, except I used lyrics from JD in the Straight Shot.
Oh, hell yes. Now there's nothing else I want to do, and I've got 2.5 hours left in the show. Hey, before I say...
Just read it on air.
You know what? That's an excellent idea. I should do that. But before I set you loose, I want you to settle a debate I was having with a buddy of mine who is a Nuggets fan. As I'm watching Jokic, a 60-point triple-double is so dumb. It never happens. And then Russell Westbrook was like, hey, good game, watch this, and just fumbles it away. Are the Nuggets, are they in danger of Andrew Lucking this? Well, the Colts were never able to surround Andrew Luck with enough talent. He got hurt. He's like, I'm out. Are the Nuggets, look, they did win a championship, and in Denver, that's hard to do. I'm not taking that away from them, but he is so generationally special. Is he being failed by his team?
Oh, boy. I don't want to say yes yet. I think we're in that zone. I think they're on that trajectory. I think if it goes this way for another couple of years, we're going to have that conversation in earnest. But I'm hesitant only because we're only a couple of years removed from their championship. We did just enter this new CBA that made it tougher. Now, I think the Nuggets, generally speaking, have been kind of a cheaper organization. They don't like paying the luxury tax anyway. But, they have bled talent the last couple of summers, and the system as it is now makes it hard to replace that talent. But that's the job. Like, we can make all the excuses that we want about the CBA and second aprons and all this, but, like, the job when you have a superstar of his caliber, a generational talent, is to do everything possible to put them in the best possible position to contend for titles. And I don't think you can say that the Nuggets are in that position right now. Now, the West is weird. The Thunder are the only, they're clearly the favorite by a mile, and you can't make a clear-cut case for any of the teams below them as the number 2, right? It might be Denver, it might be the Lakers, it might be the Clippers, it might be the Warriors. It's just kind of a mishmash, and they've all got a case to make. So maybe the Nuggets make it, and maybe they make it at least to the conference finals. But are they failing Jokic right now by not giving him the right kind of supporting cast to contend for titles? I think the conversation is legitimate, and we'll leave it at that for now.
Howard, thank you, my friend. Appreciate the time. Have a great weekend, and we'll chat soon.
Thanks, man. Talk to you soon.
Howard Beck covers the NBA for The Ringer, spent a number of years with the New York Times. He was with Sports Illustrated. He has been probably top 3 NBA writer, in my opinion, for 2 decades, mostly on Blue Sky now, but you can find the links to his work up on his Twitter, X, I don't know, whatever they're calling it, Doge website. At Howard Beck is where you find it. Howard stops by today, brought to you, courtesy of our friends at IFA Country Stores. The weather's about to get warm next week, and my guess is it's probably going to stay somewhat warm to the point where you're going to have to start thinking about your lawn care and do it now. And any drive to the basket begins with the first step. On the court, that's the ultimate power move. IFA's Step 1 Crabgrass Preventer and Lawn Food is the first choice to grab your yard the healthy, thick green look you desire. The neighbors will be green with envy. Shop IFA online at ifa.coop or stop by one of their 18 Utah locations today. All right, coming up on the other side, one of our favorites, the TV voice of the Utah Jazz, Craig Bolerjack, is our guest. For you RSL fans, stay tuned because Jason Kreis is going to stop by, and we're going to talk about, where we're at in this process of trying to add some talent to Pablo's group. RSL welcomes in the Galaxy to America First Field coming up on Saturday for a 2:30 first kick. So we are busy on this Thursday afternoon. Don't go anywhere. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. 5 games left for your Utah Jazz after the Rockets beat the Jazz last night by a lot of points, by 38. At Indiana tomorrow, at Atlanta on Sunday, home against Portland and OKC before finishing off at Minnesota Sunday, April the 13th. Our next guest is the TV voice of the Utah Jazz, and I would imagine we find Craig Bolerjack in Indianapolis, Indiana on this Thursday afternoon. Is that correct, sir?
Spence, it is. We touched down about an hour or so ago, then bust in and trying to beat all these storms around the Midwest. It's bad. The wind has been really bad on all the stops, all the flights so far on this road trip, and I guess spring will bring that type of weather. But, yeah, we got on the ground. That's all that counts, and here we are waiting for another game tomorrow night. And as you just said, an early tip Sunday late evening or late afternoon against the Hawks, and then back home before we play 2 and then go up and see Gobert and Jingle and Joe and Mike Conley and Nikhil Alexander one more time.
Not going to make some corny analogy between the rough weather and the Jazz. I will not do that. I'm just going to ask you this, Craig. How are you, man? How are you? How you doing?
Yeah, I'm. You know what? This is a challenge. I'm not going to cut corners on that, Spence. It is. Look, I like to win. I like to call winning basketball. Who wouldn't? I think most of these players want to win, but they also understand and bought in on what the task at hand is. And, that's what my job is, too, to still try to find some positives. It's hard. We've kind of rinsed and repeat on occasion, some of the talking points, but each day is different, man. It's an amazing thing on who plays and who doesn't, and who has, excellent, who's excelled. You had Isaiah Collier, who, was in the spotlight after passing John Stockton's rookie assist record. I like what Isaiah's done. He seems to have a focus that I didn't realize that he had. And, he runs, and he's damn fast. And if you run with him, you get some rewards. But right now it's about youth and minutes and how they're going to fare. And now I think the attention after talking to Justin Zanuck last night on the air, I wish he could have stayed longer, but you know how timeouts and all that stuff goes, Spence. I think he's going to join us again Sunday in Minnesota. But the focus now really is where the lottery selection will be. I think the lottery show is coming up on, correct me if I'm wrong, the 12th of May.
Correct.
About a month, 5 weeks out.
Yep.
I think that'll give the Jazz, obviously, and Jazz fans a direction of what's going down and what they will do, and then the rest of it plays itself out in the draft. And I think the picks that Danny has in that bucket, they're deep. How does he use them? I do not know. Are the Jazz a player in the trade market? Most likely. Will they try to bring in 1 or 2 pieces? I would say, yeah. Do they want to try to work next year's draft? I would guesstimate that that's a real possibility. But again, that's beyond my pay scale. But it's a tough task to build a team through the draft and have to go through the process, Spence, of losing to get there. I wish the NBA had another way. I really do. And we kind of used this time on the road to discuss those possibilities, just to, again, entertain the fans because they deserve it. And, it's hard. It's hard. I think Adam Silver has a real task ahead of how he wants to play this out with his new television contract and making sure players play when fans come to watch their favorite player play, and that particular player doesn't play. So I've watched it on the road a couple of times this past week, and saw a kid the other night wanted to see one of the Jazz players, and they had traveled in, and the guy's not there. So it's hard to explain to him, and you see the disappointment on the young man's face, but it's reality of what professional sports is right now, and even in the amateur game too, Spence. That's what the portal's all about, right? I want to go someplace else and find a better home. So it's a crazy world right now. Crazy.
Yeah, I mean, look, the incentive structure, as far as the way that the NBA is set up, is mandating that the Jazz do what they're doing, right? Like that's right. They're doing what they have to do, as it's set up with the current incentive structure of pro basketball. And the hardest thing in the world is to convince very rich people that are making a lot of money that they need to do something different, because they're going to be like, why? Right. And you reference the NBA TV deal. So I think it's a problem. You think it's a problem, but I don't know that the NBA thinks it's a problem. But I wonder, based off this incentive structure, based off of conversations that you have with Zanuck and Danny, whoever else you have access to, if they have become resigned to the fact that this is the only option they have. Because, early on, first year of this, I know we're supposed to say tear down, but first year, I'll just say, of the post-Quinn Snyder Jazz era, Lowry's an all-star. A lot of that was because he had some grown-ups playing with him, namely Mike Conley as his point guard. And I think that may have given them a false sense of, wait, we still have a lot here, and maybe we're a Mikal Bridges or a Paul George or a Drew Holiday or Kristaps Porzingis away from kind of being back in a competitive space. And, now it's a situation where there's not a lot there. And I just wonder if you feel like they've just become resigned to, okay, we weren't able to get any of the big game hunting done. We could not get any of these big names that we were in the mix for. And so does it feel like they're now resigned to this long game pain tolerance based off of the, what we're seeing in front of us?
Spence, I think they're in on that, as you just outlined perfectly. I think that Justin and Danny, tore this team down for that particular reason. After a couple of conversations and a couple of interviews and stories that I read concerning Donovan this year, having, quote, the window was, he thought the window now was kind of still open, but, the Jazz or he decided to go elsewhere. I think the 2020 bubble was really kind of the end of it, to be honest with you. I think we saw more issues. ESPN did a great timeline of that night in Oklahoma City that Big T and I were involved in. And, it kind of brought me back to saying, it was a hellish night, but there was a lot of things prior to that, which I think is where we are today. It's been a 5-year journey, step by step by step, I think, from where they were, the best record in the NBA in the bubble, and then just a slide, down the slope. And Danny came in and said, hey, he didn't like the way the guys responded, didn't think that they were competitive. I'm just paraphrasing, not totally putting quotations around it, but I think you know what I mean, is that from his sense of where he was as a player and how he built Boston, that this team wasn't really connected. So let's start again. And that's where we are. They were too good for a year or two with Olynyk, too good with Mike, too good. Even, Simone Fontecchio, they get a first-round pick, Spence, back in return. And so here we are, and now they're going to have to judge on who stays on this roster and who does not, who stays in Summer League, who do they want to take another look at, and who do they want to release. As Will Hardy said, this is not an easy league, and you better have some strong, you know what I mean. To survive in this league, you've got to be a tough guy, and that's where they are. Who's going to have the wherewithal to want to work hard to improve their game, and then have the attitude to actually, see it through and be a part of what the Jazz want to become. It's a tough journey. I think this year is, looking around, it's worn on a lot of people. I think I'd raise my hand to say, COVID, the year of COVID and after COVID, I think we called 100 games, out the Jumbotron. And I thought that was difficult. And this is different because you're around players and you see the emotions and the highs and the lows, and mostly have been low. I haven't won a road game since January 5th in Orlando. Jeez. That's a tough thing, Spence, for a team to try to continue to be motivated and go to practice, go to shoot around, and still be a professional, especially when you're 19, 20, 21, 22 years old, right? In the older days, you were already 22 coming out of college, and now you're growing up in a totally different way. I think that's what's a challenge for Will, is to try to motivate, or keep some positive vibes going. And I tell you, he's a master of his verbiage. I think he still shoots from the cuff. He talks about disappointments, the highs and lows. And I think what he is hoping that the players listen, to what he says in post-game comments, because there's a lot of truth there and a lot of things to ponder and think about.
So I want to follow up about Will, because, you know, you can't be like for a year like this, where for the first time in the 50-plus years of the Jazz history, they've lost more than 60 games.
Right.
There's no way Will every single night can be completely honest about where he's at in this process.
No.
He would run out of energy. I mean, but my guess is the way he expressed himself after the last Houston loss, following getting dump trucked by Memphis, is more in line with the way he actually feels than the way he presents himself every night. But I totally get it. He has to be measured. He has to try to find positives. He has a young locker room where he's got to be careful about running down players that are being asked to do things that they're not ready to do. But you're around him. You're around the team. Like, honestly speaking, Craig, what sort of toll do you think losing like this takes on a guy that seems to win as much as Will wants to win?
Oh, look, his staff and Will, I am amazed at this point in the season that they're still putting together shoot-arounds and off-day practices, But he tells me, and I watch practice and shoot-arounds on the road and at home, not practices, but shoot-arounds at home, that he maintains, and he's been very consistent, Spence. I can say that straight up, man. Now, behind the scenes, I'm not privy for that. But in front of us and how he approaches it with his team, he switched things up a little bit to try to have more fun at shoot-around. Get away from some of the angles and, pistol grip, whatever you want to call it. I'm not, in his verbiage, of how he calls plays. Instead, they'll do 5-on-5. They'll do some 3-on-3s. And, I saw a really competitive practice the other day where the guys actually liked to get on the floor and play against each other, but not the coaches. So I give him credit for trying to keep the players' minds intact when a lot of them are drifting. And I think that happens again, too, with the age of the NBA now, Spence, where you just haven't really learned how to be a professional. Sure, you still got emotions. Sure, you want to win. And sure, you're thinking about your future. And losing, let's be honest, no matter what business you're in, if your sales are down, or if your ratings are down, or if your wins and losses don't jive, then that puts added pressure. And you're thinking about your future now. Am I going to make the squad next year, or am I out of the NBA? Does someone see worth in what I do? And I think Will tries to give them some directions on how you make this journey and still survive it. But do they listen? I don't know. And, some players are going to be gone. Let's just be honest. That's just the way it's going to be. And Justin and Danny are going to pick 5 or 6 that they think still have the ability to grow and develop during, a 3-year window, I would guess. I think Walker probably passed the test this year, right? Had they given up on him after year 2, the sophomore slump, then you wouldn't see what Walker Kessler has really become. Does he need work? Absolutely. Free throw line? You bet. Is he going to be a three-point shooter? Doubtful, but they want to give him an opportunity. So that's what I've been watching, Spence. It's a complicated 82 games that I've never been involved in the worst season of the Utah Jazz. That's 51 years of basketball, mind you. And no Jazz fan is used to having 61, losses in the column there. But it is what it is. And probably things will calm themselves down if the Jazz actually win the lottery, right? There's 3 teams that have a 0.3% chance of grabbing the number 1 pick. Maybe everyone just kind of says, oh, it was worth it. But if that pick doesn't go the Jazz way, then you have to ask, what direction do they go, right? What direction do they go? And that's going to be an interesting summer once again. Every summer is interesting, but this one's maybe the most intriguing of all.
Well, the reason I ask about Will is in last night's only a vacuum. It's only a moment. But we'll use last night as an example. Like, I'm watching the game, and Sensabaugh and Collier just blow it on like 3 straight dribble handoffs, like a really simple action from Houston led to wide open 3-point shots on 3 straight possessions for Dylan Brooks, Jalen Green, and I think it was Cam Whitmore who nailed one.
Yeah, Cam had checked in, right.
And all they were, Craig, were dribble handoffs. And both Bryce and Isaiah just like forgot to stick with one or the other. And I'm just watching this through the prism, like, what does their head coach really think? Because it feels like, Craig, every night, if Will wanted to be really honest about what he's seen, he could find because my guess is Will and his staff are coaching how to guard dribble handoffs. Like, there's no way these players are not learning how to do this. It's like Coach Witt says all the time. All I ask for my players is, are you physically capable of doing what we're asking you to do? And mentally, do you understand the ask? And these players the Jazz have are certainly physically capable because they're pros. But I don't know if it's just lost in translation. I don't know if they're young. There are so many moments every night where I'm like, this looks like a team that's never played together before. And I just imagine if Will wanted to, every night he probably could blast them in the postgame presser.
Right. He hasn't, by the way, which I think is brilliant on his point because he doesn't want to lose 1 or 2 guys when a coach will bark out someone in the media in a post game that's going to cause trouble down the road. But what he tries to do is address them as a group and not just single out 1 or 2 individuals on a given night, Spence. Again, anybody who's played sports, do you have the physical capabilities, right? And you just said it, you're in the NBA for a reason. You're God-given talent, right? The other part of it is, are you a quick learner? They always talk about, always got basketball IQ. Where are you in the learning process? And a couple of things, too, this year that has come up is how were they trained? How are players now trained coming up through team play, AAU ball, and what is the fallout now, Spence? Maybe we're actually living it. Not only the Jazz, but many other coaches around the league I've talked to have kind of hinted to the same thing. Youth is one thing, but do you come in and leave purely on your athleticism and then you get sold the goods that we're going to develop him? But I think there's a lot of coaches that are concerned overall about where basketball is going because the basics of basketball have been bypassed because of TV, great players who make it look easy. Steph Curry, okay, not going to blame him, but that's what he does, and those are the highlights you see on a particular network. And it started with Michael Jordan, actually, in my opinion, where that group started to see nothing but the greatness of highlights. But, oh, by the way, the Bulls lost by 12, but it was about the highlight and the entertainment. And now the 3-ball has become such an important piece. I think the Europeans are taught at a much younger age, Spence, basic skills, how to step, how to pivot, how to pass, how to rebound with 2 hands, how to bullet pass it from the chest out. And some of this stuff gets lost because every young man thinks they have one skill. And so instead of learning to play the post or learning to play the 2 or the 3, I know it's positionless basketball now, but you still have to have basic skills for all those things. And sometimes a kid is picked out of a crowd just because he's a little bigger than the other. And the other guy always goes to the point guard, right, because he's the shortest guy on the floor. And they're never really taught the true skills of basketball. And I think it's a concern. That's me. That's just me. I know, you learned it the right way. I had 1 year in high school because I was more football-minded. But, boy, I'd say the basics were pretty simple. Dribble, pass, rebound, team. And, I think strangely it's been lost. I really do. But the Europeans, I think, are way ahead of where the U.S. players are. And they've gained a lot of ground, I should say. They've gained a ton of ground. Look at some of the high-level elite players in this league and the skill set they have. That's proof. That's proof of this conversation in my book.
Want to move over now to your just kind of the feel on the player side of things, because one of the things that I don't understand, and I will admit sometimes I read too much into body language and too much into I just can't imagine getting my head kicked in and like laughing and smiling and walking over the bench. So I look at the players and I watch the way that they're digesting, getting their doors blown off every night. And I was actually told this by somebody over there, and it tracks with what I'm seeing. Like the one player that really feels like this sucks is Walker. And I was told by somebody that's over there, like Walker's the one that takes this really hard. Does that track with kind of what you've noticed?
No, he loves to win, man. He's competitive. He has put a lot of work in. I think all these players are struggling right now just to say, okay, I get it. This is my job. But, Spence, I'd be disappointed. I can't speak for Danny and Justin, but I would guess that they want their guys to be competitive. They want to – this has to hurt. If it didn't, then get out. But it's a tough balance, isn't it? I mean, it has to be. I'd go nuts because you're taught in sport that the work you put in, the blood, sweat, and tears that you go through with teammates, whether it's on the bench, in the weight room, on the floor, in the huddle, on the football field, whatever sport you choose, baseball, soccer, whatever it may be, everyone's got a story about you sacrifice because you're part of a team. But you also have to individually sacrifice because you're working out. You're breaking the body down and building it back up. Yeah, Walk wants to win. Man, he works at it as much as anybody, and it does bug him not to play. And to lose right now, the team is at a point that I think, again, you got 5 left, Spence, and it's going to be a good thing for this team just to take a breath and get away, work on a few things, stay in shape, and then come back for Summer League, and we'll get a better picture of what direction the Jazz are going to go and with whom, right? Still don't know who's going to be a part of this continued process and how the draft lottery is going to turn out in 5 weeks' time. But, no, I'm with you. I see a lot of guys who have hopes to be great in this league, and this is not fun. This is not a fun time right now. And I think Will and the rest were hoping that many of them would learn the game better, become better because of it, because of the minutes, and not having John Collins on the floor, Lowry Market, and Sexton's missed his share of games too, and not put the heavy hitters in JC, and let the young guys take probably since the All-Star break, they're probably 90% of the minutes are played by about 9 guys. And are they going to be better than they were when they started the season? Well, you better hope so. If not, they're going to probably be moved, and that's going to be the true story when the season comes to an end. And those decisions belong solely with Justin and Danny. And yes, Will Hardy does have a voice in that group.
All right, Bowler, before I set you loose, we'll end on a positive because you referenced Isaiah Collier breaking John Stockton's rookie assist record. 10 more last night means 429. And by my calculation, he's only 15,378 away from John's career record. And look,
I needed that laugh. That's good, man.
And I'm not knocking on Isaiah. I mean, ultimately, John played 18 minutes a night as a rookie. He played behind somebody named Ricky Green. He only had 5 starts. Right. But when you look at this rookie class, I really love the Stephon Castle kid. I was actually hoping he would fall to the Jazz. But Zachary Richachet, Alex Sarr, Khalil Ware has played well as of late, Jalen Wells. And the Jazz have started this campaign to encourage media members, including Howard Beck, our guest last hour, to offer up a vote for Isaiah to make first-team All-Rookie. I don't know that he can make first-team All-Rookie. He feels more of a lock for second-team. But is there a shot, you think, that maybe based off of the way Isaiah's kind of responded to this challenge that he could be All-Rookie? He's the only candidate the Jazz have for a postseason award.
Yeah, I think there's a shot, with 6.2 assists a game and some of the publicity that came with the name John Stockton. And you make a great point. John didn't start for 3 years. That was the Jerry Sloan way. You have to earn it. That's what happened with D. Will in the early days of his career as a rookie. I'm starting, coach. You pick me here. Got to wait your turn. And that's what happened to Stockton behind Ricky. And so I think, again, sometimes people think that record means a lot to Isaiah. He put his eyes on it, and he said, yeah, I'm going after it. But John didn't, like you said, his starts weren't there, his minutes weren't there, and Isaiah has taken advantage of his opportunity, right, to actually own that record now because of the time he's been on the floor, unlike John. But I think he's got a shot. It's because I think his speed, his attitude. I think with teams around the league, when I talk to broadcasters, there seems to be a real intrigue about him. Taken late, 29th, had the relationship with Bronny, at USC, and he always comes back to say, no, Bronny played with me. I didn't play with him. I like that because he's trying to take take his own credibility to himself, that he didn't ride the tails of one Bronny James. But I think he's got a shot. I think he's become more of a liability for teams to slow him down. They put more ball pressure on him. At half court, at the top of the 3-point line, they seem to really try to engage him. But man, that first step, he'll blow by a lot of guys. And I think teams are beginning to realize and appreciate just how good he is developing in a very short period of time. So yes, I think he's got a real shot. Is it going to be, will it surprise me if he's a second teamer? No, but I think he's got a shot at it. But, I thought, Oscar Tshiebwe may be the G League MVP, and he didn't win that. So that guy had a tremendous year, by the way, and he's a great guy. I'm anxious to see if the Jazz have plans for him, too.
All right, Bowler, well, enjoy the Windy City. Have a good call tomorrow. Enjoy Atlanta. And, 5 games left. So get to that finish line. Thanks for the time, sir.
Yeah, we're trying to sprint down the finish line. 5 to go. And Spence, good talking to you, pal. See you soon.
All right, the great Craig Bowlerjack brought to you today by our friends at Prize Picks. Springtime is here. Baseball season's underway. Don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the diamond into your Prize Picks lineup, whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, first inning runs. Take your pick of more or less for your shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash today. On Prize Picks, you can mix and match player projections from different sports. Combine your favorite baseball players with players from basketball, hockey, esports, and much more. Here's the deal. If you download the Prize Picks app today, and if you use the promo code ESPN700, they're going to give you $50 at checkout when you play that first $5 bet. Do not have to win the bet to get to $50. It's on the house. So download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700, and you get $50 courtesy of our good friends at Prize Picks, where you can run your game all season long. 2 hours down, 2 hours to go. We'll switch gears. Coming up on the other side, Jason Christ, the legend from RSL, is our guest. Do a little sports court with our friends from Handy and Handy. Then we'll launch into the 5 o'clock hour of the program on this, well, I don't know. Feels like April outside, but it is Going to do a little sports court today with our friends from Handy and Handy coming up in a bit. We'll launch into the 5 o'clock hour of the program on this Thursday afternoon. A little chilly, a little rainy outside here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. RSL welcomes in the LA Galaxy Saturday at 2:30. Forecast is okay. Should be all right on Saturday. A little early afternoon kick. And our next guest is a club legend. And if I'm honest, he's a life legend. Okay, so let's welcome him in. Jason Christ, Thursday afternoon. Jason, how are you, sir?
I'm great, Spence. Even better when you give me such nice compliments like that to start off with.
Well, I just want people to accurately remember exactly who you are. You are a legend, Jason. You understand that, yes?
Perhaps, but maybe even more understandable is the fact that it was a long, long time ago, and I guess that's why we're concerned if people will remember it or not.
It wasn't that long ago. I mean, you were the coach of a team that won a title in 2009. You had a good CONCACAF run. It wasn't that long ago, Jason. Give yourself some credit, please.
I don't know, Spence. I just keep feeling older and older.
Yeah, I know you're going to roll your eyes, but I'm with you at this point as I continue to age. What's the favorite? What's the one goal that you score throughout your career when you're laying in bed at night? You remember that one? Is there one that comes to mind?
That's a tough question. And the truth is that I have a very, very bad memory. So oftentimes people bring up things that happened in a game or instances, and they say, "You remember that?" And I'm like, "No, I don't." And maybe it comes across the wrong way a lot of times. I don't know what that is. Maybe I got hit in the head too many times with the ball or something. But if you had to make me pull one, I would pull the 100th goal actually. At Rice Eccles Stadium. It was obviously a special one, a momentous occasion because it was the 100th, but it was also a pretty darn good goal, left-footed volley from outside the box that was laid down to me by Chris Brown. So, yeah, I'd say that one.
Shout out to Chris Brown. I remember that goal. Is that the only good memory you have about playing soccer at Rice Eccles Stadium? Be honest.
I think so.
Yeah. Well, no, I understand. That was a rough time for all of us. But, hey, we live and learn, and we move on. All right, Jason. We got to start with the progress. We had Pablo on a couple days ago, and last week Pablo hopped on and said he was told that we're about 4 days away from potentially 2 different signings to add a little talent to the attack. And I hate to break it to you. Here's my soccer analysis. We need to add a little talent to the attack with this club right now. So just give us the update, man. I don't want to hold your feet to the fire, but RSL fans wondering if these players are going to be signed.
Wait, did you say that he said we would 4 days ago, or a week ago we were supposed to have it, and 4 days later we didn't? Which is it?
A week ago, it was 4 days away, and then a couple days ago, he kind of tapped out and said, I'm not really sure where we're at this point.
I think that speaks to how volatile these situations are for us as a club. I think, we have, it is not for a lack of trying, Spence. I think all of us have been talking about it. None of us have been lying. We are very intent on adding a player or 2 in this window. We have gone so far as to make offers. Some of those have been rebuffed. Some of those are still in negotiations. I feel quite confident that there will be additions. I just can't be that confident on exactly how fast it will happen.
So I know you have to be careful here, so I'm going to be careful how I phrase the question. And certainly I would never ask you or anybody else to talk about a scenario involving people that literally sign their paychecks. But there clearly have been reports out there that we're in the middle of another ownership transition. Is it fair to say that that situation may be delaying the potential of adding pieces to this puzzle?
No, I don't think that that's really been a consideration, to be honest. We've had direction from really the moment that we found out that Elias Manuel wasn't going to be joining us. Even before that, our direction was we were going to add another striker on top of him. So the idea was to come into this season with 3 strikers. One that would be the main guy, Elias, as a secondary figure to replace Anderson Julio. And then we were adding a 3rd young player, which we all liked, in Arias Piol. And so when we lost Elias, I think that really sent us into a tailspin and kind of made us think about whether we needed to change that idea and go with more of 1 main and then 2 younger ones. And so that's the direction we've been taking since then. The change in ownership that is imminent really hasn't had any conflicting opinion or conflicting ideas as to that. So absolutely not. I would say that's not relevant to the situation.
The natural dumb guy follow-up is what's the holdup? I know these things are complicated, and believe me, I've been a part of the scenario where feeling like something was close, and then visa this, paperwork that, player changed their mind that. So I know there are complications, but what would you say to the fan base as far as what the holdup is?
I would say it this way. Have you ever bought a car?
I have, yes.
Yeah, and you went to the dealership and you said, okay, I've got a budget in mind here that I need to stay within, and you negotiate and you make an offer, and oftentimes sometimes the answer is yes. The salesman goes to the manager, and the manager comes back with the salesman and says yes, but many times he says no, or many times it's a no as of right now, and then there's a negotiation. So I think the thing that probably people need to understand is that we do not have a blank checkbook here. We are not the LA Galaxy. We are not Inter Miami. We are not the big clubs. We operate within a budget, and we have to make budgetary decisions. So I think that does tend to make things a little more difficult. And I think that has been the major delay. The other piece of it is that sometimes you can go down the road with a player that you're really high on, and you may find out that player actually doesn't want to come to MLS. So, there's just so many things that go into these decisions that make it complicated. It is not because we are just sitting on our hands and not trying to move forward or nervous about making decisions. It's none of those things. It's just we have to get everything aligned, and we have to be within a budget.
I'll ask another dumb guy follow-up. You've played 8 games in total. You've scored 6 goals. Do you feel urgency to get this done?
Does the urgency go up? Is that what your question was? Sorry, I broke up.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like it's getting late early. It's not just lack of results. It's really lack of quality chances and finishing. I mean, it's clear. Pablo this week, I asked him about Saturday, and he outlined a potential of playing like a false 9, maybe. And I'm like, well, that's tough because, that means you're not really thrilled with the 9s you have at your disposal. Is the front office approaching these negotiations with urgency because you're leaving a lot of points on the table, Jay?
Spence, there was a very good GM who one time told me that you should not do harm. So you should not add a player out of urgency or out of the feeling like we have to win this game on the weekend, because oftentimes when you do that, you make poor decisions. And so we have to make a smarter decision that's going to be for the good of this club for a long period of time. And I think that's how we're behaving right now. We certainly aren't going to be pushed into any urgent situation. I would not want us to add a player that I don't think is going to be a major difference maker, because you only get to add these types of players. You can only have 3 of them on your roster. And for us, we can only have 2 because of the roster model we've chosen. So we do not want to get this decision wrong. We would hate to make a decision out of angst or urgency, and then 6 months from now say, actually, this player isn't good enough. And by the way, we can't just replace him. So we have to be diligent in our process.
In quotations, you don't want to add harm, credited to Steve Pastorino, 2005. Okay, moving on. All right, so let's just focus on what has happened so far and the players that are at Pablo's disposal. What would you most okay, so if we remove what I perceive to be a clear lack of quality at the striker position, what else goes into this anemic offensive attack that has bred 6 goals in 8 games?
Well, some of it has to do with just creating the chances, right? So the player that you're talking about that you would like us to add is the finisher of chances. And then if you step back and say, oh, in fact, we haven't created enough chances, well, then we've got a different problem. And so I think that the problem that we have isn't just about one player. I think the problem that we've had is a little bit of lack of consistency, a little bit of lack of performance by a couple of individual players over those number of games. I think some of it comes down to the fact that we had Champions Cup and we rotated the team. I think some of it comes down to getting an ejection early in a game, and the very next game you're really not in a soccer game. You're more just in a war, as we were at Minnesota. So I think that we're just being a little bit anxious right now about things. We've only played 6 games. There's still time in front of us. I think also that if we all, as supporters and family members of the club, start to talk about, these new players coming in, we forget that we need to be focused on the players that are here, and focused on making sure that the players are here are playing their best. And so I think there needs to be a little bit more of a siege mentality here. And this is something that your father taught me, that the players and the coaching staff needs to be operating from the perspective that there is no more help coming over that wall. And that we have to, as a group and as a team, we have to band together to make this thing work. If we're constantly looking for the next player and for the next help, then we aren't going to be focused on doing what we need to do to perform at our optimal level.
Okay, fine. I'll fall in line. I hate interviewing people that have worked for my dad because you bring that up and now I'm just going to my room and I'm grounded for a week. Okay, fine, Jason. We'll focus on the group that is here. Okay, and we'll have a siege mentality. Goodness, PTSD. I kid, obviously. Love you, Pops. Okay, so the players that are here, what have you liked? Let's wax positive for a moment. What are some of the things that have stood out that are positive?
I think a couple of games ago at Houston, we had a performance by a striker that I felt like was a very, very high-level performance in that game. And we had a performance from two attacking midfielders that both scored goals in the game. And we had a performance for many of those minutes where we did actually create a very high number of goal-scoring chances. We didn't take them all. If we had, we would have won that game 4-1. But there have been performances. There have been players showing what they're capable of. And when they do, I think we have a high-level team. What we haven't had, I don't think, is real consistency through that. So, have the players played well and then the next game played better. And I went back to, I think some of that comes through the fact that we were having to, or the decision was made to rotate so many players and complete lineups through CONCACAF Champions Cup. So there just has not been any sort of rhythm or flow amongst the best starting 11 to really kind of establish how we want to play and who we want to be. I would also say that I think in many of the games, we have been making tactical adjustments very early on or even going into the game that we're skidding away from a little bit about the identity and the game model that we formulated last year.
So you referenced earlier, it's not just the finishing of the chances, it is the chances that are created. And on paper, it feels like, with Diogo and Diego, you have two very dynamic chance creators. I want to go individually with both of them, and I want to talk about Diogo because on paper, he is your designated player. Are you getting what you need from that silo based off of the paycheck he's receiving?
I would say that at the beginning of the season, I felt like he was headed in a really, really good direction. I felt like 3 games ago, like I said, at Houston, he scored a goal. He then had a chance that he probably should have scored. Diego scored a goal. We were getting to the final third very, very well. And I felt like he was really starting to perform at the level that we had wanted him to. And then we had, in the 25th minute, a silly ejection at home to Dallas. And then we went to Minnesota in the frozen tundra and hurricane that was supposed to be a soccer game. And those types of players are almost never going to have really effective games in those types of conditions. So for me, I would go back and just say, I think we were moving in a really positive direction. And I'm going to hope that that's just going to roll right into things on Saturday and that he continues to move in a positive direction because I think it's in there.
Diego, Pablo himself on the program has implied like this is kind of his show. He kind of gets the keys to the Lamborghini and let's go. And he's had some national team call-ups, and to start the season, he was wearing that mask because of the broken nose. And look, there's still so much quality. He's one of those players like a Javier. When they get on the ball, you just get excited. You kind of sit up and perk up and watch a little bit in a way that you don't prior to him receiving possession. Are you getting what you need this year from Diego Luna?
I would say half of the games we have and half of the games we have not. And that is to no fault of Diego's. But I do think that the fact that he was without soccer for a month because of the broken nose that he took with the national team in January, that set him back. Then you had a player out there wearing a mask who admittedly afterwards said, I literally can't see. So a player that plays in his position that needs to have a 360-degree perspective all the time, you're asking a lot. And so I think that affected his performances. Then when he removes the mask, I thought he had a couple of outstanding games. And so again, it's a player for me that we know the potential, we know the capabilities. It's just a matter of him starting to put those performances together back to back to back.
Same question about Mark Zook, who, during the summer window last year, after you guys brought him on board, it didn't take very long to see all right, there's something there. Okay, there's some juice there with this kid. Are you getting what you need from him?
Again, I think same exact answer. So now I think we're coming up to the answers to some of our questions about why we're not creating enough goal scoring chances, or why perhaps we haven't scored enough goals. Because these players that are in these positions that are supposed to be lifting us and creating attacking chances and scoring goals as well, by the way, we need goals out of these three positions. Their performances have been a little bit inconsistent and a little bit spotty. And there's a lot of reasons for that. We don't just heap the blame on the players and say, well, that's not good enough. No, we need to look at the reasons. We need to work with those players. We need to coach them. We need to bring their performances up. We need to draw the consistency out of them. We need to give them some confidence. This isn't just about them and then we all walk away. We identify the problems and then we try to address solutions.
Could keep going down the list, but I'll just ask you, are you getting what you need from anybody on the team right now?
Yes, we are. In fact, I think we have one elite performer in the team, and his name is Rafa Cabral.
Yep, agree with that. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think he's been dynamite. Help me understand, and it could be just me being unfamiliar with this Sam Junqua kid, but there's a lot to like about Alex, in my opinion, Alex Catranis. I was unaware that we were going to be kind of in a battle in that position. It felt like Catranis had locked it in. Can you help me understand that?
Yeah, and again, I think this goes straight to what I said earlier. I think some of the issues we're having is because the beginning of our season was so tumultuous. And tumultuous, what I mean exactly is we had 4 games in 2 weeks. Like, nobody starts the soccer season that way. You just can't. From a physical perspective, you can't build the base fitness level to ask your players to play 4 games in 2 weeks in the very first two weeks of the season. So the decision was made, okay, we're going to rotate wholesale. So it was like, here's 111 is going to play the CONCACAF. Here's the other 11 that's going to play the MLS season. And so, part of that decision to have 2 left backs was because last year we felt like what we asked from a physical perspective of that position is borderline inhumane. So we have to have multiple players to use in that spot. I still think that we have to have multiple players to use in that spot every single game because of what we ask. I'm not sure there's a human being, or not too many anyways, that are capable of performing at a high level when you're asked to sprint up and down the field for 90 minutes, and you're asked to be on the highest line in the attack and on the lowest line in defense. So we brought in another player in Sam to help us alleviate some of that and compete with Alex. And so I think that competition is one that is, it's pretty obviously open right now. The coaches have looked at both players for a lot of minutes. And I'm not sure that either player has really put their best foot forward and said, and essentially said to the coaches, you're not going to get a choice because I'm going to own this position.
All right, final one here, because I will ask you about, I'll say, the 2 9s on the roster with respect to the Brea kid who came in as a sub. Piol got the red against Dallas, out against Minnesota. Forrester has been more or less the first choice 9, more or less, but those are your 2 preferred 9s as of now. What are you seeing from them that at least gives you hope that they can maybe play better as we step forward?
I think I would want to go back just a little bit here, Spence, and say that it's not everybody's opinion that and certainly I bet you if you asked Jesus Brea, he'd tell you he is a 9.
Gotcha.
He has some capabilities to play like a 10 as well, but in college he played majority as a 9. And so I see qualities in him, not from a physical perspective because he's not a tall guy and he's not a super fast guy, but he is a guy that's really good around the goal, and he is a guy that's really good with his hold-up play. And on top of that, he's really good at combining with other players around him. I think he has similar characteristics to how I used to play as a striker. So he's a little bit different, but I wouldn't qualify him as a false nine in the way that Lionel Messi has been asked to play that position. So I see three players there. I think all of them again have had moments where you're like, oh, this looks really good, and then all of them have had moments like, wow, this looks really bad, and that's just part of being young players. So we have to again appreciate who we are here. We are a club that develops players. We are not a club that goes out and signs $10 million forwards. We're a club that goes out and finds players and turns them into $10 million forwards. So Aria feel like he's the one I was referencing. Against Houston, I thought he was fantastic for the 70 minutes that he played, and they subbed him out for Forster. But I thought he really didn't put a foot wrong. He was doing everything that we asked of our nine. He just hadn't had a goal in the game, but he had a couple chances.
Do you get nervous when you see me walk into the 100 Lions dinner?
Do I? No, absolutely not. You make things funner.
Okay. I felt like you were mad at me after I peppered you with questions. But look.
No way.
Okay.
No way.
Good to hear. Good to hear, man. Thank you for the time. We'll be pulling for you Saturday, and we'll chat soon. Thanks, Jay.
Appreciate it, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. RSL in action on Saturday. They welcome in the LA Galaxy, who won MLS Cup a year ago. The Galaxy are off to the worst start in the history of their organization. They have 0 wins, which quick math tells me is not good. 4 losses, 2 draws. They have not won yet this year. So hopefully RSL can get back to their winning ways coming up Saturday with a 2:30 kick. RSL.com is where you go for single game and season tickets. All right, we'll do a little sports court coming up on the other side with our friends from Handy and Handy. Then we'll launch into the 5 o'clock hour of the program on a Thursday drive. So don't go anywhere. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. It is Sports Court time. We do it every Thursday right about now with our good friends Garrett and Preston Handy from the law firm of Handy and Handy. Gentlemen, happy Thursday. How we doing?
Hey, Spence. How's it going?
Hi, Spence.
All good here. All good here. And I'm glad we're going to talk about our first story today because I was kind of following it when it went down. And Pat McAfee, ESPN, they could be in a little bit of hot water. There was a viral internet rumor going around about a young lady from Ole Miss. And the rumor, I'll let you guys kind of take it from here, was that she hooked up with the father of her boyfriend. It was like an internet thing. And then McAfee and ESPN kind of furthered it. And this poor young lady, like her life is just in shambles. Apparently she's holed up in her little dorm room and won't even kind of enjoy her collegiate experience. So you guys fill in the blanks. What's going on here?
Yeah, Spence, I hadn't heard anything about this, but you kind of talked about it right. Apparently, some rumors, and they're rumors, and now it's been found out that they're unsubstantiated rumors were flying around some, I don't know, it's called Yik Yak, so I don't know if that's a really popular social media thing, but it was going around there, and so here we go to the NFL Combine, and Pat McAfee, who's got a very popular show and millions of listeners, he's there, and they're talking about Jackson Dart, who's the Ole Miss star, a Utah kid, and on comes Scheffner, and they're talking about it, and out of the blue, McAfee dives into this rumor that he's heard about, and he says, oh, you hear about this Ole Miss freshman girl, and talk about, as you mentioned, a relationship with her boyfriend's dad, and he jumped in, and Scheffner was caught off guard, and he kind of kept leaning into it, and from there it just caught fire. One of the reliable sources is our guy, Antonio Brown. He jumped in on it, and in whatever social media he's got, he reposted some things. And another guy with a radio show, Vaughn, he kind of wrote into it and was really loud about it. And since that time, it, as you mentioned, has caused just myriad of problems for this young girl. Her pictures being posted everywhere. She's walking around campus, and slurs are made at her. Her family. She's had to move out of the dorms. There's been campus police involved saying that she might be at risk. They've now hired a lawyer to look into this and see what legal claims are, and they say they are going to pursue these legal claims. And I guess these legal claims would be obviously a claim of defamation. And defamation, as we've talked about plenty of times, is a statement, verbal or written statement made that is false. It has to be false. And it has to have caused damage. And they're claiming that she's, suffered all kinds of damage. The statement was that, she says that her life's been ruined. She's staying up until 5 a.m. every night, throwing up, not eating. She's so anxious. She's, she said, what's going to happen for the rest of my life? So, yeah, defamation. And I think there's a different standard for defamation when it's not about a public figure. This is a young, anonymous girl who I think is interesting. We're reading some of these articles. These articles have pictures of her, so she's far from anonymous now. So the question is, McAfee, we know that he gets laughs. He gets, people like to listen to this. He's brash, all of that. The whole Brett Favre thing, he came out and said, it was just my opinion. I was saying it. I wasn't saying it for the truth. And apparently he did in one part of it say allegedly. So, yeah, that might be his position. But I think this is something that I'm interested in following and seeing what happens with this, because I think a lawsuit will be filed against McAfee and obviously his employer, ESPN, to try and rein this in. And probably other people are going to be named as well, especially those with, big, voices, and they have a lot of audience. And the dad came out and said, when stuff like this is said by certain people, it gives false statements. It gives them legitimacy, and then people run with them and do what they want, and people are, very irresponsible and don't think that it's going to cause any problems, and they can do it anonymously. So that's the problem.
Garrett, we can ignore that Preston claims he doesn't know what Yik Yak is. I guarantee he's on it all day. And just throw it over to you for your side of this.
Well, he's got a disclaimer that runs at the beginning of a show, which says, among other things, and it's a little bit funny, but he says the opinions expressed on the show don't reflect the beliefs of, ESPN. And I wonder, if that sort of disclaimer really flies. I mean, here he is, an ESPN employee with a show on ESPN, and he can, on that giant platform that he has, and then, ESPN wants to be shielded from things that McAfee says. I I don't know that's going to stand, but I think certainly ESPN's in the crosshairs and not just McAfee. So,
breaking news: somebody is suing the NCAA. That somebody this time around is Jeremy Pruitt, who was fired by Tennessee, and he's brought a $100 million lawsuit towards the NCAA. Guys, fill us in here.
Yeah, and his firing was in 2021. I mean, so it's been a little while, but here he comes around, saying that he was fired, basically that he was a sacrificial lamb. He was fired for cause and fired for some alleged recruiting violations. I mean, among other things, that like he and his wife made cash payments to players, things like that. Again, under the quote unquote old rules, could do those kinds of things. And so, so he was fired, and so he's, I think at the time he had $12 million remaining on his contract, but he really hasn't coached since then. And so I assume that's where the $100 million comes from, is not just the wages remaining on the contract, but also future wages that he would have earned and damages to his reputation. But he's saying these violations were going on before he coached there. The other issue he had, and I don't know about this, he complains that when the violations came to light, the university conducted their own internal investigation, which is something that we see all the time. And to do this internal investigation, University of Tennessee used their own attorneys to conduct that. And he's saying, hey, you've got a conflict of interest. Essentially, you're not independent or objective if you have your own attorneys investigate somebody who, again, if what he's saying is you guys just wanted to get rid of me and dug up a reason to do that. So big lawsuit coming, and I think we'll expect to see some additional maybe probably a motion to dismiss from Tennessee and the NCAA.
All right, Preston, you're up.
Yeah, Spence, this is interesting. I think one of his claims is kind of that University of Tennessee kind of conspired with the NCAA. They kind of, let them, the NCAA didn't come in and do their investigation. Tennessee kind of thinking, we want to get rid of this guy. I'd like to know what his record was as a coach, because, if he's a great coach and he's got a top 10 program, Tennessee might have tried to look a different way with the investigation and maybe have not been so hard-lined on the investigation. Who knows? I don't know it is, but his claim was that they were trying to get rid of him and conspired with the NCAA. There's one part of it about, and I don't know if Garrett can comment on this, that he was hit with a 6-year order to show cause while Tennessee avoided a postseason ban. It seemed like they negotiated this, and kind of there he is, the sacrificial lamb. So that part, I don't fully understand that, but we're just on the precipice of this, see where it goes. $100 million, I think he realized he was out coaching high school football and teaching high school, and thought, oh, you know what? This isn't that great. I need to go after that money that I feel like it was taken from.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It tracks. We'll see how it plays out. All right, over to the world of pro football, where some Texans season ticket holders are accusing the team of fraud in a new lawsuit. What's going on here?
Yeah, so this group of Texas ticket holders, and they are identified as PSL holders. They're permanent seat license holders, and I think that gives them a certain distinction. They have filed a lawsuit against the Texans, and I always wonder when you got Texas, these are obviously fans, and they love going to the games, and they've supported the team for, 20 years. How's it look when they're suing them? Do they get to keep coming to games, or do they want to keep coming to games? Anyway, they filed a lawsuit against the team for fraud, conspiracy, breach of contract, a violation of the Texas Free Enterprise Act. Basically, they're saying that there was an increase in tickets, and they're not sure that the team complied with these. They didn't give them the proper invoices. One of their claims is that they think that this new pricing was in place, and they wanted to pressure. I'd like to know their distinction as these PSL. They're claimed as license, season license holders. They're claiming that they were hoping that they think that the Texans were hoping they would not renew because of the price increase, and then the Texans could go resell these tickets for a better price. They claim along the way, hey, we're this group of people. We were the ones that supported and paid a lot of money to help with this type of stuff. They note that $40 million in help of, this group of this status of ticket holders doing this. They claim discriminatory pricing, loss of their tenured status. I think that's where the Texans are looking at that, going, whoa, wait a minute. We didn't used to be that great of a team. Now we are, and we've got these people that have this tenured status. They're claiming that there's market manipulation, retaliation against resellers. I guess these people would resell their tickets. They had a group of tickets, and the violation of the Free Enterprise Act of Texas, which I'll have to look that up. I don't know exactly, but this one's just getting started. I hope it's something we can follow along and talk about more on Sports Court.
Garrett, over to you, buddy.
Well, I get it. I mean, the fans, they feel some resentment, right? They stick with the team through bad years and renew their season tickets and maybe lose money on those tickets. And then in the good years, the prices go through the roof, and they feel like they're not rewarded for their loyalty over those years, that tenure, that Preston's talking about. Where it's like, well, hey, where's the benefit for sticking with you guys through bad times? So, I get it. Get why they're seeing this.
All right, moving over to the latest with the House versus the NCAA settlement, and we're all hoping to receive more information about what this is going to look like and therefore be able to kind of cover accurately what the Mark Harlans of the world now have to work with on a number of different levels. I'm just going to read the headline because it's very lawyer-y, and I'll put it over to you. House versus NCAA settlement, objections rebuked by class counsel. Sounds very important and legal. What do we have going on?
It's important and legal. That's right. So we've been talking about this House settlement forever, but one of the
Gary, you there?
Did we lose you?
Oh, no, we got you. We got you now.
Garrett, are you there? Well,
go ahead.
Garrett, I don't know that he's here. I'll jump in.
Yeah,
Garrett, are you there? The House settlement. I think what we're seeing here, Spence, is this is just kind of there's a hearing coming up on Monday, and as we know, not everyone is in on the House settlement. And this House settlement was an antitrust lawsuit, and our guy Kessler, who's become the big name in antitrust, especially in the world of sports, we're at the finish line here, and everything's being looked at, and some objectors come in, and their main objections are they're saying this isn't fair from a roster standpoint. Roster positions. It sounds like they're gonna lose roster positions in this, and a lot of people are saying, hey, well, what does that do to all of us? They're saying it's not fair in the area of Title IX. And, the judges looked at all this. There's a hearing on Monday. It's supposed to be the last hearing to have it approved. I wonder if it will be. But one thing I think Kessler, interesting, comes in and says, hey, antitrust doesn't mean it needs to be fair to everyone. It just it's about competition in the marketplace. And Title IX is a whole different thing. There's different standards for Title IX. But, this is about antitrust, and that's what the House settlement was. When they settled it, was trying to avoid this big antitrust lawsuit that was limiting competition. I don't know that this is just one last thing that the objectors are coming into. A lot of people aren't in favor of, but we'll see what happens on Monday. Anyway, that segues just into another. I think this is interesting. The transfer portal has opened up, and a recent article said that a lot of schools are diving in and trying to really push the transfer portal right now so they can get deals done with athletes because they don't know quite what the House settlement is going to do to some of these deals. And so if they can get them under, deals in place before the House settlement, when that comes in and, is in place, and my understanding of the House settlement, schools are going to have, they're going to have audits essentially of their, I read it that says that Deloitte, a big accounting firm, is going to be doing audits of all of, the $22 million that all of the schools are going to have. And so, all this rush to get the transfer portals, I think players getting in place at new schools and having NIL deals in place, that's even affected by the House settlement and what's going to happen here in the future.
Let's check in on Garrett. It sounded like he fell into a ditch of some sort. Garrett, are you there with us? Are you okay? All right, Preston. I'm gonna leave that. I'm gonna leave that up to you. You got to check on your guy, and I would imagine you already covered the final quick hit, right? The men's basketball.
That was it.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, that was it. Just how schools are doing this because of the House settlement coming up, and they don't know the oversight that the House settlement will have in the audits with Deloitte.
10-4, sir. All right, before I set you loose, for any of our listeners who have legal questions, how can they get a hold of you? Over at Handy and Handy.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from anyone out there. We're a personal injury law firm. We'd like to help you with your case. Give us a call at 801-264-6677 or jump on our website at handylawutah.com. You can learn about us there and you can submit your questions.
We'll let you go check if Garrett fell into quicksand. Preston, appreciate the time, my friend. Have a great weekend.
Just got a text from him. I think he's doing okay.
Okay, there you go. Go Utes, all right?
All right. Go Utes. Take care, Spence.
All right, there he is. Preston Garrett, Handy Law Firm of Handy and Handy, brought to you today by IFA Country Stores. Any drive to the basket begins with the first step on the court. That's the ultimate power move. IFA's Step 1 Crabgrass Preventer and Lawn Food is the first choice to give your yard the healthy, thick green look you desire. The neighbors will be green with envy. Shop IFA online at ifa.coop or stop by one of their 18 Utah locations today. And it's time now for our Uinta Golf Leaderboard update. So it's the final tune-up before Augusta next week. It's the Valero Texas Open down at TP San Antonio. It's their Oaks course. And right now, Sam Ryder shot a 63 to take the lead. Keith Mitchell right behind him, 8 under par. Brian Harmon, 6 under par. Carson Young, how about Jordan Spieth? 5 under par there as well. Tommy Fleetwood, in addition to, Maverick McNeely, 4 under par. Tony Finau, local boy, 3 under par, carded a 69 today, as did Sam Burns. So there you go. The Masters tournament, of course, at Augusta is next week, and you can stop by one of the 5 Utah Uinta Golf locations or visit worldwidegolfshops.com for the latest deals on Callaway AI 10-time smart clubs, Titleist Pro V1 and Pro V1X, the new TaylorMade QI35 Woods, Ping G440 drivers, and more. Our good friends at Uinta Golf. All right, we got 3 hours down. We got 1 hour to go. We'll get into the 5 o'clock hour of the program on a Thursday afternoon. Coming up on the other side right here on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. We are proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network. All right, let's get a Drive at 5 time on a Thursday afternoon. We're looking at about 2 minutes past the hour, 5 o'clock. A little rain a little earlier here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. Pretty chilly outside. It's about 41 degrees as we make our way towards the weekend. But as it is every single day, it's good to have you guys along for the ride. My name is Spence Checketts. The name of this program is The Drive with Spence Checketts on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. We are proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network. We've had a very busy show today. About an hour left in the program today, and then we'll break into a little Grizzlies hockey. Grizzlies basketball. Grizzlies Heat tonight. Fun night in the NBA. We actually have a game that matters between two good teams that actually are employing basketball players that want to play basketball. It's the Warriors and the Lakers tonight. Both those two teams trying to jockey to stay in that top six and therefore avoid the play-in tournament. The Jazz were smoked last night by the Houston Rockets. They're going to be in action tomorrow against the Indiana Pacers. Craig Bolerjack from the road will stop by today to give us all the latest on the Utah Jazz as they're jockeying with the Washington Wizards for the worst record in the NBA for the right to get the number one overall pick and then hopefully draft Cooper Flagg. The 5 o'clock hour of the program today is brought to you by IFA Country Stores. It's going to get warm outside at some point. If you're new to our fine market, this is kind of the deal. You never know when it comes to March and spring weather, and sometimes May and April and June. You never know, okay? So it'll get warm. Time now to start thinking about your lawn to take care of it the right way. So any drive to the basket begins with the first step. On the court, that's the ultimate power move. IFA Step 1 Crabgrass Preventer and Lawn Food is the first choice to give your yard the healthy, thick green look you desire. The neighbors will be green with envy. Shop IFA online at ifa.coop or stop by one of their 18 Utah locations. Started things off with Neil Smith today to kind of preview tonight's Utah Hockey Club game. There is one local team in action tonight. That is the Utah Hockey Club. They welcome in the LA Kings for a 7 o'clock drop of the puck here at the Delta Center in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. The Kings are a really good team. Hockey Club, they've won a couple of straight games, but they're not going to make the wild card this year. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. Even when they were 3-4 points back of the final wild card spot before the St. Louis Blues just took off, Blues have won 10 straight games. They have run their differential to plus 18. And right now, the Hockey Club 9 points behind both the Blues and the Wild. Looks like the Blues and the Wild are going to be the two wild card teams. The Flames do have 2 games in hand. Hockey Club beat the Flames the other night. Flames are 7 points behind both the Blues and the Wild, so it looks like they're going to run away with it. The LA Kings right now are second in the Pacific. They are 5 points behind the Vegas Golden Knights. The Golden Knights have locked in a playoff spot. The Jets and the Stars, Winnipeg Jets and the Dallas Stars have also locked in playoff spots. The real chaos now exists in the East with the wild card race there. The Rangers are tied with the Canadiens at 79 points. Both those two teams are 5 points behind the Ottawa Senators. The Columbia Blue Jackets are 2 points behind both the Rangers and the Canadiens. In the West, it seems like everything is pretty much settled in. Hockey Club did announce that after their final home game of the regular season, as there's only a handful of games left, they will hand out their team awards. The final home game is going to be Thursday, April the 10th. Nashville is in town, so something to look forward to if you're a Utah Hockey Club fan. But if you're going to the game tonight, be safe and enjoy it, as only a handful of games left before our first season as a hockey market will be behind us. So that's kind of the main local storyline today. We also brought in Howard Beck for a little NBA basketball. Again, kind of a big night tonight, certainly on TNT, where they will have Memphis, Miami first. You're going to hear that on our radio station. Then the late night game will be Golden State and the Lakers, and it is kind of a sneaky big game. We only have 5 or 6 games left in the NBA as the playoff chase is behind us. As far as the college basketball storylines, we discussed this a little bit earlier. Starting today, it is what is known as a dead period in college recruiting on the basketball side. It simply means there are no visits allowed in person, no on-campus visits. So the University of Utah found out yesterday that Keanu Dawes has removed his name from the transfer portal, and he will come back and play basketball for Alex Jensen, Rafael Chilius, Wes Wilcox. But because it is a dead period right now, we probably won't hear a ton of news. Now, Terrence Brown is a transfer from Fairleigh Dickinson. He was a 20-point-per-game scorer a year ago for FDU. And there's a report out there that he met with the Utah coaching staff today via Zoom. Okay, so we are still waiting word. We only know that Hunter Erickson is going to spend his final year in college in Hawaii, as he should. Good for him. And then Keanu Dawes is coming back to play for Alex and his staff. No news on players like Jake Wallin or Miro Little or any of the other players that have put their names in the transfer portal. Ezra Asar is another name to watch for. I think a lot of people believe that Ez is a guy that AJ should look at to bring back to play for the Utes next year, but no official word just yet. Of course, if anything comes our way, we will bring it to you prior to signing off air at 7 o'clock tonight. BYU found out yesterday that Dallin Hall has entered the transfer portal, joining Kenan Catchings. So we'll have to wait to see where Dallin ends up. I think Dallin leaves BYU as a player that should be looked at as a real legend in a lot of ways. A key cog for 2 NCAA tournament teams, one of the first-choice players off the bench for Kevin Young for a team that went to the Sweet 16, something that BYU has only done, I think, 3 times in their history. BYU, of course, holds the unfortunate honor of making the NCAA tournament more times than any team without advancing to the Final Four. With A.J. DeBanza in the fold, with his Xavion Stanton kid from Vegas in the fold, and the potential to bring back a bulk of their roster, I think BYU could start preseason top 10, top 15, thereabouts. There are a lot of conversations about negotiations, and that's what's happening now. These are negotiations when it comes to trying to get these young players to come back and play for you. And BYU apparently is prepared to pay Richie Saunders 7 figures to come back and play for them, which makes sense. Richie Saunders played like a player that could start for some of the elite teams in all of college basketball. And against Alabama, he was like the only one that looked like he belonged. And against some of the other teams that BYU faced this year, where they had elite strength and athleticism, Richie was kind of the guy who shined. So what does it mean for Richie Saunders, who at the age of 23 might be very ready to come back, or might be very ready to get his NBA experience started? Because the timeline, I mean, look, remember Cooper Flagg, this prospect who everybody is going all in on to try to lose games in order to draft. Cooper reclassified. He turned 18 like 3.5 months ago. He should be a senior in high school. And the deal is, if you're a college basketball player with NBA interest, you want to get the clock ticking as soon as you possibly can on simply your contract so you can get to your first max deal as soon as possible. And I just have to wonder if Richie Saunders, at the age of 23, is eager to get that thing going. If he does get the feedback during the pre-draft process, and my guess is Richie will go through the process just like Yegor Demon will, just like Brandon Carlson from the Utes did a couple of years ago before deciding to come back. You go through this draft process, and you have the opportunity to get invaluable feedback from pro scouts, pro coaches, pro general managers, NBA front office people that will tell you exactly what they think about your chances of being a pro. And they'll let you know whether or not you have a chance to be drafted in the first round, or even if you're drafted in the second round. But if Richie Saunders goes throughout the pre-draft process and the feedback is you're a late second rounder, undrafted, he could make more money staying at BYU as opposed to leaving and trying his hand at the pros. Conversations about whether players like Dawson Baker, Mihailo Boskovich, that kid apparently is getting some NIL interest. Yegor Demon, I think, is probably gone. That's just my gut, because unlike Richie, Yegor is a first-round lock, and he might be a lottery lock, depending on the mocks you're looking at. Early on in the season, he was struggling to make his threes, and his outside shot didn't look great, and he really cowered away from pressure from teams like Iowa State or teams like Houston, and I think that affected his stock a little bit. Yegor, at this point, at the age of 19, is certainly a prospect that you draft as a project, a player that might play for you in 3, 4, 5 years. BYU will lose Trevin Nell, Mawat Mag, as well as Foos Traore and Trey Stewart. Those are the players that are graduating. But what does it mean for a player like Keba Keita? Will Keba come back? Looks like he's probably got the inside track to start for them at center. Kenan Catchings is rumored to be looking at North Carolina. And with A.J. DeBanza coming into the fold and the potential of Richie Saunders coming back, this could be a case where there just simply was not enough minutes for Kenan Catchings, who has pro basketball potential and a desire to play in the NBA. But as far as the college basketball recruiting news, it's going to be quiet for a little bit. At least that's my guess as a result of this quote-unquote dead period where you cannot have players on campus for in-person visits. Right now, it's all Zoom calls. It's all, virtual meetings. And we'll see if AJ and his staff announce any players from the transfer portal signing to play for the Utes. Of course, we'll be So if you've listened to the show in the past, first of all, thank you for that. Continue to do that. We need your support. We like your support. We appreciate your support. I don't love the player comp thing. I don't love comparing a player in college to a player that plays in the pros or used to play in the pros. I just think it gives the fan base unrealistic expectations. If you're expecting a prospect to be a generational player right away, remind you that there are very few 18-year-olds like Cooper Flagg, who is 18, who look like they belong right away. In fact, the list is very short. It's the unicorns. It's guys like LeBron, Garnett, who Tom Haberstroh has compared Cooper Flagg to, had a good rookie season at the age of 18, but didn't burst on the scene as the ticket, as the KG that we all became to know, kind of came to know and love as an NBA player. So Jeremy went throughout his business of talking to NBA scouts about who Cooper Flagg reminds them of. And as a Jazz fan, I continue to say, if you want to know why the Jazz are doing what they're doing, it's the right thing to do with the infrastructure of what pro basketball offers, with the incentive structure that the NBA has built. If you're the Utah Jazz, you should have done this 2 years ago, but it's better late than never. And I just think they've become resigned to the fact that whether it's the modern day and age of the NBA or simply what the NBA is and has always been, if you're going to build this thing, there is not a magic bullet. There's no big game hunting. My guess is Danny Ainge will never utter that phrase again after they said we're going big game hunting and then 2 months later signed Drew Eubanks, right? There were rumors that for whatever reason, people down there thought that they could trade for Mikal Bridges and sign Paul George. I don't know what level of delusion that was. But they clearly have been resigned to this reality that in the infrastructure of the NBA and with the way that the league is set up, this might be their only chance possible. And I will say this, if May 12th comes and goes and we're all watching the lottery and the Jazz do win the thing for the first time in Jazz history, the Jazz have never had the lady luck shine upon them. They've never had the ping pong balls bounce their way. And if they do, I will say that this has all been worth it, even though it sucks. They're doing the right thing. It's just really hard. So the comps that Jeremy goes over, and I'll encourage you to go to ESPN.com to read it if you want to learn more about Cooper Flagg. Kawhi Leonard is one that we've heard quite a bit. He talks about Lamar Odom. Now, before you roll your eyes, Lamar Odom coming out of high school and college was thought to be generational. He just had some off-court issues that never really fully allowed him to live up to his potential, but he did have a good NBA career. I had never heard the Jason Tatum comp, which I kind of like. And Jason Tatum, of course, a Boston Celtic who was drafted by Danny Ainge. There's a Scottie Pippen comp out there. The one that I don't love is Andre Kirilenko. It feels like those are scouts that are looking at measurables and measurements and just like, yeah, he's white. He must be playing like Andre Kirilenko. Andre was a really good player, an excellent player. But if you're drafting somebody number one overall, you just want to make sure that it's a better situation than drafting the next Andre Kirilenko. All due respect to AK, who was a good player here for a long time. So ESPN.com is where you find it. Good story by Jeremy Wu on the pro comps for Cooper Flagg, if you want to learn a little bit more about this player that everybody is pining for in the NBA. All right, wrapping up the program, final segment of the show for this Thursday afternoon edition. You know, I'm okay, Porter, if a day in April feels like April. I just don't need a day in April feeling like December or February.
And it also kind of throws you for a loop when you don't know what it's going to look like when you wake up. And then 2 hours later, it's sunny. You go for a walk in the morning, and it's like nice 70 degrees. And then you're out for a little walk, and all of a sudden it's a blizzard. That is spring in Utah. So I guess if you're not used to it, you haven't been here very long.
Jan Brownstein, who kind of is in charge of the golf portion of the radio station, has brought in our list of golf courses that we are going to be giving away rounds to starting on April the 7th. And all it does today is depress me because I look at that list. I'm like, I want to play there. I want to play there. I'm ready to get out and play.
You're close. You're getting very close to that time. Obviously, some of those courses are open. Some of them are ready for play, but I bet all of them will be here in the next couple weeks.
Well, we'll have to see. It's the Valero Texas Open right now. It's the final tune-up before the Masters. Augusta coming up next week. Tony is in a good position at the Valero. He's had a good year, so hopefully Tony can show well at Augusta. Did you ever watch the McDonald's All-American game growing up?
Yeah.
Oh,
I watched it pretty intently. I would say, I want to say up until I was out of high school, I guess. It kind of plays into you're really into the McDonald's All-American game when you're 13, 14 and there's AAU ball going around, you're doing the circuit stuff. That's kind of when I was mainly into it, but I still check it out depending on who's there. If there's a prospect like a Zion Williamson, if there's a prospect like a Cooper Flagg, for sure I'll check it out. If not, we'll see.
AJ DeBance 17 points, 5 boards, 2 assists to lead the West to a 105-92 win over the East. It was at Barclays.
Seems good.
I always wanted to play in it. I used to watch it when I was a kid. I'm like, oh, man, that would be so fun. Britton Johnson, the McDonald's game that Britton played in was stacked. It was like Tracy McGrady, Lamar Odom. I don't know how many Utahns have played in the I think Frank Jackson played in it.
He did.
I think Britton did, Frank Jackson. Is it A.J. DeBence is not a Utahn? We can't count him as a Utahn.
He's not, but he played prep ball here. And if that is what your litmus is, then in some form he is.
Right.
Now, how he got here and, the workings behind that story, again, money is doing a lot when it comes to the sports world, the college sports world, and now even the high school sports world. So is he a Utahn? No, but he played high school basketball in Utah. So
but
that's something.
Claiming A.J. DeBance is a Utahn is like the golfers are like, hey, Utah's Mike Weir. Like, he's not he lives here, but he's from Canada. There's a flag next to his name that's Canadian.
Yeah.
Our 51st state. How are the tariffs with Canada right now?
Oh, dude.
Let's not do that.
I was watching my 401k today.
Not great, Bob.
Not great. But hey.
No, there's no hey. There's no way to spin this positively, no matter what the propaganda is you see on Fox News. All right. Let's say goodnight. We've got the Grizzlies and the Heat coming up. It's a big one between the Lakers and the Warriors. Two good teams that might have players that are employed to play basketball show up to play basketball and try to win. I know it's wild. All right, Porter, what comes our way? Let's get our weekend started out the right way, and hopefully a day that has a little more sunshine than today. What comes our way on a Friday show?
On a Friday edition of The Drive, Zach Harper comes your way for the NBA Daily Assist. We'll chat with Paul Pugmire, of course, 1 week out from Augusta. Thor Nystrom drops by talking some NFL draft, a little offseason football, and the GOAT, Adam Mikulich, joins the program on a Friday.
He is the GOAT. I'll be clear about that. And by the way, a little birdie is telling me that Paul Pugmire is on his way to Augusta National Golf Club next week to enjoy a little Masters. So we'll do that with Paul on a Friday. Get your weekend started out the right way and join us for a Friday drive. And we'll say goodnight for a Thursday edition of the show. Special thank you today. Neil Smith, Howard Beck, Craig Bowlerjack, and Jason Christ for any of the sound that you may have missed from the radio program today. Good news. It's all up online for your digital consumption. You have a few options. ESPN700sports.com is the website on the worldwide intrawebs. Download our mobile app and take us on the go. It's the best way to listen to the station. It's the way I do it. It's the ESPN 700 app. Available for free in the App Store and the Google Play Store as well. Then finally, for what we do in our space, specifically every afternoon for 4 hours, you can check out our podcast page, which is called The Drive with Spence Checketts. It is available wherever you get your shows. Please subscribe, rate, review, say nice things in the comments, give us all the stars. It helps. He's Porter. I'm Spence saying goodnight. Enjoy your Thursday evening. Enjoy a little NBA action, and we'll talk to you on a weekend edition, a Friday edition of the program. So join us right here on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. We are proud to be part of Utah's ESPN Radio